build a UFO. In the 1989 interview that started these leaks, the claim sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. Months later though, when his identity was revealed, Bob said he worked at a secret facility that I'll talk more about later, where alien technology was being reverse engineered, meaning, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. Look, the premise seems a lot less absurd now. Bob said that his job was to help with the reverse engineering of one of 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. He claims that one of the flying saucers, the one he coined the sport model, was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touch to liquid titanium. Bob said that the propulsion of the studied vehicle ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which once again, I'll touch on later, I promise. In a subsequent interview that November, Bob appeared unmasked and under his own name, where he claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G and that his employer was the United States Navy. Bob said the craft he was working on was dismantled, and the reactor he studied was topped by a sphere or semi-sphere which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. He further explained that the craft was split into 2 main levels. So the reactor was positioned at the center of the upper level, with an antenna extending to the top, surrounded by 3 gravity amplifiers. These were connected to gravity emitters on the lower level, which can rotate 180 degrees to output a gravity beam or anti-gravity wave. In 1989, Bob said the seeds of the saucer he saw were approximately tiny human-sized, and that he had seen alien cadavers of a corresponding size. He's mentioned that the main craft he worked on would aim its belly to the target, and then bring all of the amplifiers to power and fly off in that direction, with the belly or bottom forward. If that description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, I'm assuming you're familiar with the gimbal UFO? So the Pentagon released the video back in 2017, where naval pilots encountered a fleet of the unknown craft off of the coast of Florida in 2015, and have since had dozens of similar encounters. So in that specific video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration, which means a craft without rotors, heat signatures, tail fins, and no tail number, and it was moving in a way that is counterintuitive to aeronautics. So when Bob saw that video, he said it had to be a gravity-propelled craft, which mimics the propulsion system that he described. So okay, if you don't believe me on that one, how about we look at another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. I've talked about this many times. So the Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Ace's commander Dave Fravor, says he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth and that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. So when Bob was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the sport mode, which, like I said, that was his name for the craft stashed in the desert. And he says it's the exact same propulsion system. Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told the I-Team one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe that the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. And hey, Bob made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. So what do you know? Now the Pentagon's on the same page all of a sudden. Now, in 5th place today, we have the footage the Pentagon refuses to release from Alaska. Between the dates of February 4th to the 12th of 2023, 4 different unidentified objects were shot down over Alaska, South Carolina, the Yukon, and the Great Lakes. While cockpit audio from F-16 pilots who shot down the UFOs over Lake Huron was released, a spokesman for the Pentagon has confirmed that the footage will not be released in the near future, being quoted directly saying, "I can tell you that there is not currently any images or video footage that we can release. The imagery remains classified, and I have not received any information as to the potential timeline on a change in classification." This refusal is a drastic difference in comparison to the quick release of an Air Force photo of what is believed to have been a Chinese spy balloon that was shot down at the same time over on the East Coast, and footage from when a Russian plane appeared to intentionally collide with a drone last March. Noted UFO researcher John Greenwald requested the footage and photos of the UFO shootdowns be released via a Freedom of Information Act request, with the Pentagon claiming national security exemptions to deny this request. An Air Force official said that the images would reveal cryptology and national security concerns if released. And even the Canadian RCMP are playing coy, having ended their public search for the remains. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that sounds pretty dang suspicious to me. Hey, anyone want to take a random trip to the Yukon just to sightsee? Totally not to recover UFO debris or anything suspicious.
Number 4. The Observatory. In 2007, astronomer Alberto Meyer, living in Busta Arezizo, Italy, and I butchered that pronunciation, made an incredible discovery, almost completely by accident, which is where most scientific progress gets made. He was adjusting the focus of his telescope when he spotted and tracked a UFO as it flew across the surface of the moon. Now the video shows the portions of the moon that he was focused on in close-up mode while tracking a solid black object as it flew over the surface of the moon. And look, I could just describe what is going on in this video, but I could also let you get your peepers on it and let you decide for yourself. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so here's roughly 24,000 words worth of context. Take yourself a look. Pretty weird, huh? That round black object is tracked as he catches just after it passing the Wallace crater, and yeah, this is how I'm learning that parts of the moon were named. I didn't know there was moon geography. It hovers and hesitates before making a sudden change of path at an exact 45-degree angle. Take your protractor out. The precision and control is what's giving people pause, you know? It seems to move as if it's being controlled, and with such mechanical dominance that it seems like it has to be something that's being intentionally driven, and not just a strange rock floating through the stars, or I'm gonna be honest, a bug crawling on the lens, which is what I thought it might be. Now, commenters on the video, because this thing went viral when it got posted, pointed out that the object does not decrease in size at all, suggesting that the object isn't close to the moon, and rules out the theory that this is a shadow on the surface of the moon from a large object overneath. I'm only capable of so much, I'm gonna be honest. The science stuff, that's kind of above my pay grade, but I can confirm and offer my speculation on when videos of UFOs look weird, and that's exactly what's going on here. So is this a UFO? Who is to say?
Number 4, what is Area 51? So sure, today everybody knows that Area 51 is the common name of a highly classified United States Air Force facility within the Nevada Test and Training Range. As a remote detachment administered by Edwards Air Force Base, the facility is officially called Homey Airport or Groom Lake, depending on who you ask. Okay, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Don't tell me. I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. Oh, I got it. It's home to all things unknown, and lots of alien and UFO believers, such as myself, are pretty sure that that's where all the flying discs and more tend to be housed. It's commonly thought to support the development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapons systems. Now, it has never been declared a secret base, but all research and occurrences in Area 51 are top secret or sensitive compartmented information. So make of that what you will. The CIA only publicly acknowledged the base's existence on June 25th of 2013, following a Freedom of Information Act request filed in 2005 and declassified documents detailing its history and purpose. So how does Bob play into all this? Well, we're gonna go back to 1989 when he appeared in that interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on Las Vegas TV station Klaus under the pseudonym Dennis and with his face hidden to discuss his employment at S4, a subsidiary facility he claimed exists near the Nellis Air Force Base installation known as Area 51. And once again, this was back in 1989, before Area 51 was the common knowledge it is today. He claimed that said facility was adjacent to Papoose Lake, which is located south of the main Area 51 facility at Groom Lake. He claimed the site consisted of concealed aircraft hangars built into a mountainside. He said that while walking down a hallway at S4 once, he briefly glanced through a door window and saw what he interpreted as 2 men in lab coats facing down and talking to something with long arms. Now, he doesn't think he saw an actual alien, but speculated that he saw a doll used as a reference for the size of the alleged aliens. So everything I'm discussing today about Bob probably took place at that mysterious place out in the desert. Area 51 is also believed to house material recovered at Roswell, the study of their occupants, and the manufacturing of aircraft based on alien technology. And also might be a place to host meetings or joint undertakings with extraterrestrials. It tends to be where the development of exotic energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative or other weapons programs happens, possibly where they're working on projects to do with weather control, time travel and teleportation technology, and exotic propulsion systems related to the Aurora program. So many of these tend to do with, underground facilities at Groom or Papoose Lake. So, the S4 location first talked about by Bob, which is 8.5 miles south and includes claims of a transcontinental underground railroad system and a disappearing airstrip named the Cheshire Airstrip, after Lewis Carroll's Cheshire Cat, which briefly appears when water is sprayed onto its camouflaged asphalt, and engineering based on alien technology. Number 3, contact with Zeta Reticuli. So Bob has claimed that during his, joining the program, he read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings described as gray aliens from a planet orbiting the twin binary system Zeta Reticuli. As of September 2019, No extrasolar planets have been found in the system, according to government experts, but we all know that they can lie to us about that. So for the uninitiated, what the heck is Zeta Reticuli? So this is a wide binary star system in the southern constellation of Reticuli. From the southern hemisphere, the pair can be seen with the regular eye as a double star in very dark skies. Based on parallax measurements, this system is located at a distance of about 39.3 light years from Earth. Both stars are solar analogs that have characteristics similar to those of the Sun. They belong to the Zeta Herculis moving group of stars that share a common origin. So you might be asking, okay Alexa, what does this have to do with aliens? So does anybody remember Skinny Bob? If not, I'll refresh your memory. So a very curious video showed up on YouTube in 2011, showing a collection of leaked videos where you can see an alien being interrogated by some sort of government agency of sorts. It's a typical gray type entity shown being interviewed and examined, supposedly as part of some sort of diplomatic exchange, and here's the moment you've been waiting for. He says he's from the Zeta Reticuli star system, sent as part of an envoy to discuss matters of mutual concern. According to the videos, the aliens would be escorted by special officers and only meet with high-ranking officials. Although several aliens are claimed to have been present, the one most prominently featured was given the nickname Skinny Bob. The alien appears as a very thin, slouched over figure with an oversized bald head, slit-like mouth, large eyes that seem expressive and blink, and claw-like hands. Now there was apparently a whole series of interviews conducted with the creature between 1942 and 69, although only a few clips have managed to get leaked out. The most well-known clip simply shows Skinny Bob sitting at a table, apparently in a telepathic interview, after which we see footage of the alien from head to toe, showing its disproportionately long arms and overall build. After that, there is a shot of it within a pool of some sort of liquid where it was supposedly asleep. Now, according to the videos, the aliens were often filmed without their knowledge or agreement, with document 072-E supposedly describing an incident in 1961 where 3 of the beings realized they were being secretly filmed by a hidden device, which was considered a violation of their agreement. There was a treaty that stipulated that photographs and filming of the entities would not be allowed unless specific permission was given. The diplomatic exchange of it all matches up with what we know about Area 51 being a place for secret meetings and more. Number 2, Men in Black are erasing history. So yeah, it's no secret the government has the power to erase or cover up whatever they want. And what they've done to Bob in an attempt to discredit him is a very clear example of that control. So Bob is adamant that his employment and education records have been erased and modified. So remember how I mentioned that he's a physicist? So Bob claims to have obtained master's degrees in physics from MIT and in electronics from Caltech, but mysteriously, both universities show no record of him. Now I get one institution losing records can be explained, as like a clerical error, but both losing records are a little suspicious. Earlier, I also mentioned how Bob claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G, and that his employer was the United States Navy, right? Well, EG&G stated it had no records on him, and his employment at a Nellis Air Force Base subsidiary has also been discredited by skeptics, as well as the United States Air Force. Once again, discredited or simply just erased by the government. Bob claims to have worked as a physicist during his tenure at the Los Alamos Meson Physics facility, but an inquiry into his position revealed his role to have been a technician for a contractor firm, and that he worked neither as a physicist or for Los Alamos. Not to sound like a broken record, but it's clearly the Men in Black at work here, and skeptics just need to understand that. Number 1, Element 115. Alrighty, the moment we've all been waiting for. What the heck is Element 115 and what does it do? So Bob has claimed that the propulsion of the studied vehicle that he reverse engineered ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which at the time was provisionally named unempentium and had not yet been artificially created. It was first synthesized in 2003 and later named moscovium. He said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope of E115, which allegedly generates a gravity wave that allowed the vehicle to fly and to evade visual detection by bending light around it. Now, no stable isotopes of moscovium have yet been synthesized. All have proven extremely radioactive, decaying in a few hundred milliseconds. In 2017, Bob's workplace was raided by the FBI and local police, which he theorizes was to recover element 115, a substance he said he kind of kept from the government lab. I don't blame him. Alrighty, in our third place position, we have the Guy Hottel memo. It's the most requested document in the FBI's archives, right after the photo of Elvis and Nixon riding with an alien. The file has been checked out roughly 1 million times in the last 2 years alone. So far as KG cover-ups go, this one's fairly out in the open. But that doesn't make it any less invigorating. It's a single page, an unconfirmed report the FBI never even followed up on. The file in question? It's a memo dated back to March of 1950, authored by one Guy Hottel, who served as the director of the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., addressed to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. In the memo, Hottel was relaying a story seen by an Air Force pilot about something bizarre they had seen in New Mexico, right around the time of Roswell fever. The memo describes flying saucers, circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. It goes on to say that inside each saucer was a flight crew, each occupied by 3 bodies of roughly human shape, but only 3 feet tall, and bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. The memo goes on to claim that the crafts were found because an aircraft radar had interfered with the controlling mechanisms of the saucer, and concludes by saying, no further evaluation was ever attempted. It seems like it should be a significantly bigger deal than that, no? No further evaluation? That's fine. Someone in the Air Force claims that they saw a series of flying saucers, piloted by tiny men in shiny spacesuits not even 3 years after the Roswell incident, set New Mexico news stations ablaze. But hey, it's probably nothing. At least there's some comfort in knowing that the government has always behaved like this when it comes to investigating and reporting on possible UAP and UFO sightings. Now, admittedly, there's no footage or photography of the incident to speak of, and it's a bit more government-approved hearsay. Whatever was seen on that day could have been something huge, or it could have been bogus. I suppose we'll never know, but it is worth mentioning that Project Blue Book was launched not even 2 years later, investigating UFO sightings in the Air Force, so that's all I'm gonna say on the subject.
Number 2, the Ryan Graves Report. Lieutenant Ryan Graves is a studied Air Force pilot. If you're a super big UFO enthusiast, you might even recognize the name. He's an FA-18 Super Hornet pilot who has flown the skies for 10 years and has seen countless UFOs in his time flying for the Navy, seeing all manner of things he couldn't explain. He spoke out saying, "These things would be out here all day. Keeping an aircraft in the air requires a significant amount of energy with the speeds we observed, and 12 hours in the air is about 11 hours longer than we'd expect." Now, one particular incident occurred in late 2014, when a Super Hornet pilot nearly crashed into one of these objects alongside Graves. Some of these objects were caught on plane camera, and we have got some of that footage for you here today. The pilot and his wingman were flying in tandem about 100 feet apart over the Atlantic East when something flew between them. Graves said that the object looked like a sphere encasing a cube, regular shape a plane would be. The pilots were concerned because were these things a covert drone program or something suspicious and secretive, government officials would have at least warned them, since they had fighter jets flying around for fear of collision. This was the reason the Navy was concerned that perhaps there was more to investigate with this particular encounter of unexplained aerial phenomenon. What was truly unsettling the pilots, besides the fact that there was almost a huge safety crash error there, some of that's words, right? And that was that these crafts were accelerating to hypersonic speeds, and then they would stop and turn on a dime, which is not really something the human pilots are capable of, even our best and brightest, Sorry Goose and Maverick. So what did the pilots think they were dealing with? Graves spoke out, saying, "We have helicopters that can hover. We have aircraft that can fly at 30,000 feet and right at the surface, but combine all of that into one vehicle of some type with no jet engine, no exhaust plume. So what do we think, my goblins and my ghouls? This does definitely seem like something worth digging into, doesn't it? Definitely seems suspicious, to say the least."
Finally, in first place, we have the 2004 series of spottings. On November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet when she observed an oblong object hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots, and for those of us Canadian civilians, that's around 925 kilometers per hour. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapons system operator in the rear seat, who, her name's not public, witnessed it as well. Dietrich has quoted her recollection as, "We were trying to call out what we are seeing to each other and to make sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and then our radio calls can't keep up with it." The majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and it should be noted that military pilots are trained at what they call REAS, short for reconnaissance, and referring more specifically in this case to the art of recognizing aircraft by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. On one of the other Super Hornets that launched behind Alex was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Now, I'll let the footage that the US government has confirmed as authentic and unexplained speak for itself, since I know we have the clip handy. Around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area, triple-checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for the equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time. Voorhees described what he was seeing as impossible. In just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. Calm down, Wicked fans, I know what I said. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon during the night and during the day, and it was definitely a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what it was we were tracking? No." Now, footage of this event used to exist, with Gary being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been completely scrubbed from the internet. Now, where have I heard that before?
Number 5. Well, first and foremost, if you were looking for any proof that the government definitely knows more about aliens than they let on, how about from the mouth of the 3-letter organizations themselves? The CIA released a tweet in 2014, obviously was meant to be taken in a joking manner, but still pretty illuminating, saying that throughout the 50s and 60s, they estimate that 50% of all sightings of unexplained aerial phenomena and UFOs were simply the CIA testing new aircraft. Out of context, the CIA admits they were behind 50% of all UFO sightings is an extremely attention-grabbing headline, and probably what I should have named this video. Would have got you to click better. And it is an attention-grabbing headline. At the time they were testing the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, codenamed Dragon Lady, which was able to fly at altitudes thought unreachable by a one-manned aircraft at the time. We know the CIA will always be a little bit more technologically advanced than they're willing to let on. That's just the nature of shadowy governments. But the conspiracy theorist in me has to wonder, is it even just the littlest bit possible that them releasing this could be a misinformation campaign? I mean, this is just what they're willing to admit, right? Who's to say what they won't admit? What if they put stuff like this out there so the next time you see something odd in the sky, you just dismiss it thinking, oh, that's just the CIA testing airplanes, instead of the more logical, reasonable answer that it's an alien spacecraft observing you from up above? And what if all I'm saying is just wild speculating and tinfoil hat level conspiracies because I'm trying to get views on video? It's more likely than you think. But them admitting they're responsible for most UFO sightings intones to me that they're aware of a lot more UFO sightings that are reported. Makes you wonder how much they research them all. Do you think they look at every blurry cell phone camera video posted to Reddit, or just the really serious ones that make the news? I'm hoping to get some answers someday, and I have a feeling that some of those answers are in this video. It won't all be wild speculation, I promise. And hey, if you want to see more alien stuff, click through. We've got boxes full of declassified documents, NASA stories, and videos that are just out of this world. Get it? So stay subscribed and stay scared, and I'll see you there. Number 4, the Guy Hottel memo. So it's a pretty much an open book secret that the 3-letter agencies have known about aliens in some way or another since they've started writing things down. They don't hide it or pretend to hide it anymore, which is nice. They finally admitted that Area 51 even exists for the first time a couple years ago, so we could all use a little openness in our day-to-day. Let's take a look at one of the FBI's most talked about and most viewed documents, the Guy Hottel memo. And despite being one of the most seen FBI memos, it's but a single-page document that was never followed up on. Well, it sounds like we should follow up on it. Guy Hottel was the head of the FBI field office in Washington, and his report was addressed to the head of the FBI, one J. Edgar Hoover. The contents of the report were simple, but shocking. It detailed the descriptive encounter of an agent making a physical sighting of what they believed to be a UFO. It's dated 3 years after the Roswell incident, but it was reported in New Mexico for what it's worth. Here's a quote from the memo. The saucers were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. Now, if you ask me, that is almost too perfect, isn't it? I mean, the memo lines up nearly perfectly with the stereotypical, cartoon description of aliens being little gray or green men flying around in flying saucers around New Mexico. The memo goes on to read that the agent claims they had found the saucers because an FBI high-powered radar in the area had detected it, and this radar detecting it had interfered with the controlling mechanism of the crafts. But despite all of this, which really seems like it's the paper trail screaming, proving, hey, aliens are out there, you should go check them out, the memo ends by saying no further evaluation was attempted, and the Hottel memo was never followed up on, presumably crumpled up and thrown away. Director Hoover, I guess, thought it wasn't worth his time and disregarded it, leaving it now as nothing more than an incredibly odd piece of history. Number 3. Project Blue Book. Well, here's the thing. Even if Director Hoover at the FBI didn't see fit to look into the Hottel memo, there were definitely other organizations that were looking into UFOs. Maybe it's not just the FBI, but I can tell you that the Air Force sure was. If you're an experienced UFO enthusiast, perhaps you're already very familiar with Project Blue Book, but if you're not, hey, let's talk about it. The project was officially started in 1952 and terminated in 1969. And the project had 2 main goals. 1. Confirm if UFOs were a threat to national security. And 2. Scientifically analyze any UFO-related data. Well, that seems like pretty strong evidence to me. Not that the project existed to see if UFOs are real, but rather to determine if they were a threat. That seems like they're writing and admitting like, no, we know, we just want to know if they're scary. And is that not the most human sentiment you've ever heard? If you guys learned nothing from Avatar, we gotta be making friends with aliens, not being afraid of them. In the years of Project Blue Book's operations, a stunning 12,618 reports were filed and collected. And those are just the ones that are officially recorded. Of those, interestingly, there were an individual 700 reports that were found to be unexplainable after research and intense analysis. Isn't that interesting? Now, a great number of these reports turned out to be the U-2 spy plane that we mentioned all the way back in point number 5, if you remember that far away. But that still leaves 700 completely unexplained sightings of aircraft that the USAF looked into and could not find answers for. The project was ultimately shut down in 1969, with the official explanation being given that, number 1, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever given any indication of threat to our national security. And number 2, there has been no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represent technological developments or principles beyond the range of present-day scientific knowledge. And number 3, there has been no evidence indicating the sightings categorized as unidentified are extraterrestrial vehicles. Oh, well that sounds like kind of a bit of a bummer, doesn't it? They went through thousands of documents and declared that none of it was worthwhile evidence to suggest that aliens exist. Well, it's a shame that we're never going to mention any more things of the Air Force on this video, or any more things about pilots encountering aliens. I mean, that really blows. I mean, except for our next point. Take a listen. Number 2, the UAP report. Very recently, the Pentagon declassified a series of documents known internally as the UAP report, and it was basically the sequel to Project Blue Book, the streaming follow-up. And yeah, every single time we have an alien video, I'm probably going to have a little meltdown where I talk about how last year the government confirmed that they researched UFOs and that's what they spend your money on, and no one seemed to care about this, they just slipped it under the rug. I guess we were kind of busy with other stuff, but still. What happened to our curious minds, people? We learned that the various 3-letter agencies in the States had been researching, analyzing, and scouting out sightings of UFOs, mostly because pilots just could not stop reporting them during training ops. One pilot, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, claims that he saw hundreds, maybe thousands in his career as a Navy pilot. One of the more famous ones is the Tic Tac sighting, referring to a massive oval-shaped aircraft that was spotted by 2 pilots. This one comes from 2004, and the 2 veteran pilots, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate, were the ones who called it in. 2 respected, trustworthy Navy veterans. Their report reads that the objects were spotted almost out of nowhere, some 80,000 feet in the air, which would then descend rapidly towards the Pacific Ocean, then stop at around 2,000 feet and hover in place. Very normal airplane behavior. They would drop out of radar range or shoot directly up into the sky on a 90-degree angle. For weeks, Navy crew was watching these objects trying to determine just what they were. They certainly weren't American in origin, and they weren't recognized by any other organizations. To confirm what they'd seen, Slate and Fravor were sent off on a reconnaissance mission to get eyes on it. What they found was more confusing than either of the 2 men could ever have imagined. They reported back that the object they were seeing was like a giant Tic Tac, white-colored, oval-shaped, and 40 feet long. Far too big to be a drone, and it didn't maneuver in a way like an aircraft would, making erratic movements, staying out of reach of radars, as if it knew it was trying to stay undetected. The pilots flew towards a rendezvous point to touch down, and presumably cracked their windows open and asked each other, hey, what the hell was that? But as they flew towards the LZ, the UAP flew past them at a breakneck speed and then disappeared entirely. When questioned about it, Fravor said that it was unlike any aircraft he had ever seen in his life. I mean, that guy flew planes like every day for years, so he probably knows a thing or two. Number 1. Non-terrestrial officers. Now, if you're like me, you're probably frustrated that you know the truth is so close within grasp behind closed doors. To know in your heart of hearts that there are answers to the unexplained just out of sight would drive you to do something crazy. Now, for most of us, all we can do is sit and speculate and maybe watch some lovely top 5 videos of the very handsome host talking about aliens. But for one Gary McKinnon, a Scottish computer programmer, he decided that wasn't enough and decided to take matters into his own hands. McKinnon was a genius computer hacker and had his sights set on the biggest prize he could imagine, going after NASA's servers to see if they had any hidden alien data just waiting to be found, in what was described as the biggest military hack of all time. Quite the conversation starter. Why would anyone risk their career, freedom, and livelihood on this? Well, Gary wanted the truth and he would do anything to get it. McKinnon claims he had insider knowledge that confirmed the US had suppressed anti-gravity technology reverse engineered from UFOs and free energy. In his own statement, McKinnon said, "This should not be kept hidden from the public when pensioners can't even pay their fuel bills." Yeah. Well, so what did McKinnon find? Well, he didn't find proof of the reverse-engineered UFOs that he'd been hoping for, but he found quite a lot that was remarkably illuminating. First up, a 400-page document called the Disclosure Project, outlining testimonials from government agents across multiple branches of service, reporting all their sightings and scientific analysis on unexplained flying objects. That would already be pretty impressive, but on top of that, McKinnon also managed to find a document entitled Non-Terrestrial Officers. Non-terrestrial officers? What? What? Is that just fancy talk for astronaut? Well, the document was a spreadsheet listing the names of NASA officers and employees who were to be transferred to new ships or to serve on board space stations. But here's where it gets weird. McKinnon noted that the names of these vessels listed did not appear to exist in any other database. And if that wasn't enough, McKinnon claims in his searching he saw images of aircraft that did not resemble anything he had ever seen. One in particular he describes as looking like a massive cigar-shaped craft floating over the northern hemisphere that did not look man-made. One wonders if that's the same as the Tic Tac ship. He said he was in a shock looking at the image and didn't think to take a photo. Now, after pulling off an unbelievable fast one on NASA, McKinnon couldn't resist a bit of cheeky cyber vandalism and edited NASA's website homepage with a bit of text that read, "Your security is crap, by the way." Now, I'm not endorsing hacking a government website, but that's one of the coolest things I've ever read. Now, I don't know how much you know about the United States government. Boy, do they just love it when you prove to them that they have a massive security breach in their most classified data. Presumably the only thing that kept McKinnon from being strapped to a car battery and thrown into a black van by the men in black was the fact that he lived in Scotland and was kind of hard to get a hold of. He was arrested by UK police, and the United States government tried their absolute hardest to have him extradited to the States to be tried for the fullest extent of his crimes. Honestly, I bet it was the note. I bet that's what really pushed them over the edge. McKinnon managed to avoid extradition and was protected by the Crown for serving out what would have been a 70-year sentence. But presumably he's not planning any road trips to the States anytime soon, and I'm sure NASA has improved their security just a little bit.
And we're starting things off with Antarctica. In recent years, Antarctica has gained quite a reputation for being a hotspot for UFO sightings and alleged secret government facilities dedicated to the study of aliens and their technology. An icy continent holding some of the most significant extraterrestrial secrets known to humanity. The remote and inhospitable climate of Antarctica would make for an ideal cover for secretive activities. Who the hell would want to go to Antarctica? It's vast, desolate, the weather is garbage. So not only would most people veer clear of it anyway, but it makes it very difficult for ordinary people to access, allowing secretive operations to take place in secrecy. Some conspiracy theorists point to satellite images and unusual geological formations in Antarctica as evidence of hidden alien bases. There are some who believe that there are mysterious pyramid-type structures there, buried under the ice, that may have been built by some ancient civilization with the help of alien influence, or that these structures were built directly by extraterrestrial visitors who once inhabited Earth and established bases in Antarctica. The governments of the world, particularly the United States and Russia, are said to have established secret research facilities in Antarctica to study alien technology and artifacts. These bases being equipped with advanced scientific equipment and staffed by elite scientists and military personnel. Some even claim that these facilities have made contact with extraterrestrial beings, conducting experiments and exchanging knowledge in secret. There have been whistleblowers and insiders who claim to have worked in these facilities, describing encounters with alien beings, reverse engineering of advanced technology, and human-alien research activities. Next up, we have Popocatépetl volcano in Mexico. Mexico is full of UFO and alien sightings in general. It turns out Mexico is 7th place in the world for the most UFO sightings. There were a bunch of alien fossils brought forth to a Mexican Congress recently, which really made the headlines, but this volcano is a hotbed, pun intended. I could fill up an entire list with the UFO sightings spotted in this one area alone. It's not only one of the most active volcanoes in the country, but it also seems to be one of the most active sites for unidentified flying objects. UFO sightings around the volcano have led to a lot of curiosity amongst locals and researchers. Witnesses describe seeing strange, unidentified flying objects near the volcano, often displaying unconventional flight patterns and characteristics. These sightings have been documented by multiple sources. Plenty of photographs and videos are online. One of the factors contributing to the frequent UFO sightings near Popocatépetl is its geographic location. The volcano stands at an elevation of over 17,000 feet and is situated in a region known for seismic and volcanic activity. So some think that these conditions might attract extraterrestrial interest or create unusual atmospheric phenomena that led to the sightings. Reports of UFOs around the volcano have also drawn the attention of researchers and organizations dedicated to studying unidentified aerial phenomena. These groups aim to collect data, analyze eyewitness accounts, and investigate the true nature of the sightings. Now, I think some of these sightings can obviously be attributed to natural phenomena or aircraft, but there are others that remain unexplained. Expanding things out to Mexican UFO sightings in general, though, one of the most well-documented sightings was the Mexican Air Force sighting of 2004. On March 5th of that year, several Mexican Air Force pilots filmed a series of strange, glowing, unidentified flying objects, 11 in total, hovering in the skies over southern Campeche state. The pilots were on a routine anti-drug trafficking mission when they spotted the strange objects which they reported surrounding their jet. They attempted to pursue the objects, but eventually they disappeared out of sight. Gotta say, this is a pretty compelling piece of footage. There is video of it out there online. Even though the video quality isn't great, you get to observe these objects for a long time. It's not like they just appeared and then flew away out of nowhere. Plus, I find it interesting when pilots who spend a lot of time flying around up there have something to say about stuff like this. And they're like, I don't know what that was. It's pretty interesting. And at number 3, we have Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Now, this place isn't just famous for all the alien sightings, but a bunch of other highly bizarre, suspicious things that go on there as well. Weird mutated creatures, mysterious disappearances, even ghosts. Anything goes there. It's just a grab bag of mixed genres. The stretch of land is renowned for being one of the strangest places, not just in the United States, but in the entire world. This remote area has been the site of reported sightings of strange creatures, unexplained lights, and other inexplicable events that have left locals and paranormal enthusiasts from all around the world pretty interested. One of the creepiest things at Skinwalker Ranch is skinwalkers. According to Native American legends, skinwalkers have the ability to transform into various animals and are associated with dark magic and witchcraft. Witnesses claim to have encountered these strange animals with glowing red eyes, and bullets don't seem to affect them. But we're not here to talk about skinwalkers today. Back to the little gray weirdos I hear you all chanting through your screens. Yes, the ranch is also plagued by frequent UFO sightings. Witnesses have reported seeing unidentified flying objects maneuvering through the sky at incredible speeds, performing maneuvers that seem to defy the laws of physics. These sightings have led to the belief that the ranch is a hotspot for extraterrestrial activity, attracting beings from other worlds who, maybe they just have an interest in all the paranormal activity in the area area. Skinwalker Ranch also experiences stuff like bizarre electromagnetic fluctuations, unexplained animal mutilations, and sudden changes in weather patterns. Even scientific investigations conducted on the ranch have corroborated some of this strange phenomena. Number 2, Area 51. Area 51 is a highly classified United States Air Force facility located in the Nevada desert. It's been at the center of countless conspiracy theories for decades, primarily ones featuring aliens and UFOs. One of the most well-known conspiracies is that Area 51 holds evidence of extraterrestrial life and serves as a hub for alien technology research. Believers argue that crashed UFOs and their occupants are secretly stored and studied within the base. Believers argue that crashed UFOs and the occupants are secretly stored and studied within the base. Some even believe that aliens actually work in the facility. There are stories of reverse engineering and advanced alien spacecraft leading to the development of advanced military technology that surpasses anything publicly known. Bob Lazar is a major figure in this particular area. Another intriguing mystery surrounding Area 51 is its alleged connection to top secret government experiments and projects. Some theories state that the facility is involved in testing and developing advanced aircraft, performing alien autopsies, developing stealth technology, and even time travel technology. There are enough interesting stories surrounding Area 51 to sink a ship, and some eerie stories surrounding it too. Take, for example, the disappearance of Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach was a hiker and explorer who disappeared in 2014. He'd been looking for a strange cave in the Nevada desert. He'd posted a YouTube comment stating that he had come across a strange cave shaped like an M near Nellis Air Force Base and Area 51 that had caused his body to vibrate. He was encouraged to search for the cave again by other commenters and capture it on film, which he did, posting a video to his YouTube channel Snakebite McGee entitled M Cave Hike. A couple months later, he ventured out for a third time to the cave and sadly was never seen again. His cell phone was found at the entrance of an old mine shaft, but his body has never been found. Now, he very well could have just got lost, had an accident, but given how close the cave is to Area 51 and the claims Kenny made about the strange vibrations and feeling weird around the cave, there are tons of rumors and theories that began spreading online that he may have stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to, maybe extraterrestrial or the government secret related, and that his trek was intentionally disrupted. Till this day, nobody knows exactly what happened. Finally, though, we have Dulce Base in New Mexico. This is said to be an epicenter for all things extraterrestrial. Dulce Base sits deep beneath the Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico. Now on the surface, just your average everyday town, but below ground, that's where things apparently get really interesting. Dulce Base is like the Area 51 of the underground world, a secret facility where humans and aliens are rumored to be cozying up and exchanging ideas. Some folks claim there are multiple levels below the surface, each one more hush-hush than the last. We're talking high-tech labs, mind-bending experiments, and of course, aliens. The rumors are that different alien species, from the Greys to the reptilians, are working hand in hand with the US government. As to what they're trying to accomplish, that's the big question. Some speculate it's all about advanced technology, others think it's genetic experiments, and a few even believe there's full-blown alien-human hybrid breeding programs going on. Now, where do these stories come from? Well, it's a mishmash of conspiracy theories, supposed insider testimonies, and good old-fashioned internet speculation. Whistleblowers, folks who claim to have worked in the shadows, have spilled the beans on what's allegedly happening in Dulce Base, talking about mind control experiments, human abductions, and covert operations. And of course, no wild tale is complete without a dash of controversy. Skeptics, as you'd expect, call this all a bunch of hooey, waving away the stories, labeling them as nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations and late-night sci-fi binges. But just like with everything on this list, only those who have seen these places know for sure what's actually going on.
Number 5. A sighting from Colorado. When flying over Colorado, one could expect to see tall mountains, vivid landscapes, beautiful, lush forests, and clear running rivers, all of which are things I miss while being trapped in this void. Something that you might not expect to see when looking out your airplane window is an unidentified flying object carrying visitors from another world. But just because something is unexpected doesn't mean it can't happen. As an airline pilot named Jeremy Corbell found out earlier this year. Earlier this year, Jeremy Corbell was flying over Colorado when he saw something he didn't expect. At first, it appeared to be a shooting star, but this theory was thrown out when it appeared to split into 3 pieces, which then went into a triangle formation. The veteran pilot was so shocked at this that he pulled out his phone and filmed the phenomena. While passing aircraft can often be mistaken for alien ships by people who don't know any better, the fact that this was reported by a pilot who would know if it was simply another plane is very interesting. Multiple theories were put forward, including that the lights were high-altitude reconnaissance drones, but the level of light given off by them disqualified this theory. The pilot described the lights as being unlike anything he had ever seen in his entire career of flying. Over the last few decades, many commercial pilots have apparently seen unusual craft sharing the skies with them, but have been prevented from reporting the incidents by airline companies they work for. Are the airlines worried about their pilots seeming crazy? Or are they worried passengers will be afraid of flying if they know they aren't the only ones up there? Number 4. A sighting from the southeast United Kingdom. You would think that an entire country who have been obsessed with the tales of an extraterrestrial who travels through space and time in a blue police box while kidnapping their citizens to act as his acolytes for the last 60 years wouldn't be too shocked when confronted with evidence that aliens from other planets really exist. But it would seem that no matter how much fiction one consumes, it can still be shocking when confronted with the real thing. As a security guard in England found out in our next entry. When checking CCTV footage from your work, you may be expecting to see animals or even some light crime. But in July 2022, a man in the United Kingdom saw something far stranger. Visitors from another world. On the screen, he saw a large glowing sphere suddenly appear above a nearby power station complex. It hovered above the station and then just as suddenly disappeared. At first, the man thought it was a flare, but there was no trail showing where it could have been shot from. He continued to look for a rational explanation, checking flight radar to make sure it wasn't a plane or a drone. He went outside to see it with his own eyes, but nothing was visible to the naked eye. He brushed it off until a few days later when a coworker came in claiming to have seen the same light hovering and then disappearing over a nearby field. The workers went back through their CCTV footage and posted the footage online. What exactly did they see in the sky? And where did it go when it disappeared in the blink of an eye? These workers will likely never know and will instead carry these questions around in their heads until the day they die. Number 3. A sighting in Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas is a city that would sound like a city in a science fiction novel if we didn't know for a fact it is real. A city where vice and debauchery are encouraged, with claims that no consequences will be remembered once you leave its borders. A flashy city of neon, constructed in the middle of a barren desert. Considering how ridiculous that sounds, and Nevada's already considerable reputation for alleged alien activity, perhaps we should not be surprised that visitors from another world would want to take a look for themselves. Proving that what happens in Vegas does not always stay in Vegas, we have our next entry. A man and his friend were driving home at night when they saw unusual activity in the sky. 2 large white orbs of light were floating in the sky. As if this were not shocking enough for the witnesses, smaller red orbs began to appear as if coming from the larger craft. These red lights would fly off on their own, sometimes returning to the larger white orbs. The witnesses claimed that over 25 of these red orbs came out of the craft and flew around, which begs the question. Did they see an alien craft or something else? If it was an alien craft, what was the purpose of these smaller red lights? Were they searching for something? And if they were, did they find it? Was this something sinister or simply an interstellar game of hungry hippos? More importantly, why am I asking you? The glowing white orbs reportedly stayed in place for over 5 hours before eventually disappearing into the night. Number 2. A sighting in Sacramento. For those who are more skeptical, it is understandable that you would not be impressed by a lot of footage that is released of alleged alien encounters. It is often grainy, shaky footage that looks like it was filmed on a potato rather than a camera. And oftentimes, one is right to be skeptical. Oftentimes, things can be mistaken for alien crafts when seen through the lens of a phone camera late at night in the dark. But sometimes, people witnessed the unexplainable in broad daylight. Such is the case in our next entry from Sacramento, California. In this case, a man was in his yard with his family when he looked to the sky and saw a cone-shaped object flying through the sky. They pointed it out to their parents, who were also in the yard, and all of them did their best to capture footage of the cone-shaped craft. It seemed to morph in shape between a cone and an elliptical shape, but when they zoomed in, they saw that the bottom of the cone was emitting light. It is clearly not a plane, and the light coming out of the bottom is curious to say the least. Number 1. A sighting in Canton, Ohio. When working a full-time job, having the opportunity to relax on your day off with a cold drink in the company of your loved ones is something you look forward to all week. While imagining how you will spend your leisure time, you may imagine a variety of experiences like land darts or barbecuing for your friends and neighbors. Rarely do people imagine that they will be spending their time off witnessing an interaction between the military and an unidentified flying object, as is the case in our next entry. On the 10th of November, a man was sitting on his back porch enjoying a well-earned day off when he heard the sound of a military helicopter. The helicopter appeared to be chasing after something. He looked around and saw several small, white glowing shapes moving at high speed away from the helicopter. He grabbed his phone to record what he was seeing, but several of the shapes disappeared before he could record. However, some of them remained, and he was able to capture them on film. While this is impressive footage, the most disturbing part of the story for me is the helicopter chasing them. Were they trying to research the UFO? Or were they attacking them or chasing them away? Whatever it was, let's hope that it didn't result in any tensions between humanity and an advanced alien race. With that,
Number 5. John Callahan. John Callahan, the former division chief of the Accidents and Investigations Branch of the Federal Aviation Administration, made claims that he had received information about a UFO sighting from Japanese pilots. According to Callahan, the government was involved in a cover-up, concealing crucial evidence related to this otherworldly encounter. Callahan's claims surrounded an incident that occurred in the late 1980s, which involved Japanese airline pilots reporting a close encounter with an unidentified flying object. The details of the sighting raised questions regarding the possible existence of extraterrestrial life and the government's role in suppressing such information. Callahan said that the FAA had indisputable evidence, including radar data and audio recordings of communication between the pilots and air traffic controllers. Callahan's claims were built on the foundation that the government intentionally withheld this information from the public, which further sparked concerns about transparency and accountability from the government. His claims fueled already bountiful suspicions among UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists who believe that governments worldwide are actively concealing evidence of extraterrestrial encounters. Callahan's credibility lent weight and plausibility to his claims. As a former high-ranking official within the FAA, he held a position that frequently granted him access to extremely sensitive information and insider knowledge. His decision to come forward and expose the cover-up added a sense of authenticity to the narrative. Skepticism and scrutiny quickly followed Callahan's publicized revelations. People questioned the reliability of the evidence and questioned the motivations behind his disclosure. Some argued that the claims were sensationalist and lacked the necessary evidence to substantiate them. The absence of concrete proof beyond Callahan's testimony left room for doubt. The case brought attention to the greater issues of UFO disclosure and transparency within government agencies. It fueled public demand for greater openness regarding unidentified aerial phenomena, prompting calls for the declassification of documents. John Callahan's claims opened a safe of speculation, inviting closer examination of the relationship between officials and the mysteries of the skies. Number 4. Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell, a distinguished astronaut who was part of the Apollo 14 mission, left a mark not only on the lunar surface, but also in ufology and conspiracies of government secrecy. In 2008, Mitchell openly shared his suspicions regarding the existence of extraterrestrial life and made allegations of a government cover-up. Mitchell's cosmic revelation was rooted in his very unique perspective, as he was one of the few individuals, who had ventured beyond our planet's confines. Having spent a total of 9 hours on the moon's surface, Mitchell's experiences ignited a level of curiosity that had never been seen before. His claim that extraterrestrial life exists was grounded in the belief that the vastness of the universe makes it statistically improbable for Earth to be the sole harbor of life, which, I agree with. It's so insane to me that some people think we're the only sentient life in our literally giant universe. It was Mitchell's claim of a government cover-up that catapulted his allegations into a realm of controversy and subjected him to severe skepticism. system. According to Mitchell, high-ranking officials were aware of the presence of extraterrestrial beings, but actively chose to conceal this information from the public. Their secrecy, he argued, was motivated by concerns over societal upheaval and the potential impact on established power structures. Mitchell's claims are situated within the broader context of UFO conspiracy and a long-standing distrust of government transparency. While his status as an astronaut lends a sense of credibility to his statements, people often remind others that Mitchell's assertions lack concrete evidence. The absence of verifiable proof has led many to dismiss his claims as influenced by personal beliefs rather than factual occurrences. Despite the skepticism surrounding Mitchell's allegations, they have sparked discussions about the possibility of extraterrestrial life and the extent of government knowledge on the matter. Edgar Mitchell's claims of the existence of extraterrestrial life and a government cover-up add an interesting layer of discovery to the ever-changing discourse on alien life. Mitchell's perspective as an actual moonwalker and his willingness to challenge official narratives has brought a lot of attention to his theory. Number 3. Founding UAP Task Forces. In July of 2022, a government-aligned UAP organization was created, the ARO, or the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, directed by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, is the government lead for all UAP-related anomalies. The purpose of ARO is summarized in their mission and vision statements, which say their goals are to minimize technical and intelligence surprise by synchronizing scientific intelligence and operational detection, identification, attribution, and mitigation of unidentified anomalous phenomena in the vicinity of national security areas. Unidentified anomalous phenomena are effectively and efficiently detected, tracked, and analyzed and managed by way of normalized DoD, intelligence community, and civil business practices, by adherence to the highest scientific and intelligence tradecraft standards, and with the greatest transparency and shared awareness. ARO reviews reports of UAPs and has received hundreds of reports. Dr. Kirkpatrick estimates that they receive 50 to 100 reports each month. They investigate each and every video and report using their scientific resources. The ARO reports to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks. It's the first government office to be tasked with synchronizing efforts across the DoD and the interagency to collect, report, and analyze UAPs. They are taking a collaborative, objective, data-driven approach to their mission. The ARO has a website that anyone can visit to check out all of this information for themselves. There are countless videos of UAP sightings posted to the government-backed website. They are also working on a government personnel sighting report program from current and former government employees who have any knowledge of UAP. ARO replaced the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, UAPT, which ran from 2019 to 2021. I personally think that the ARO is pretty cool. Oftentimes, alien conspiracists are shamed for not believing in science, but having an accomplished physicist show so much passion and determination for getting answers reminds all of us what science is really about. It's about understanding the worlds around us, asking questions, making theories, and of course, staying curious. Number 2. David Grusch. David Grusch is a decorated Afghanistan soldier and former Air Force intelligence officer who worked at the NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and at the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office. He is an accomplished man who is extremely knowledgeable of all of the events and conversations that are taking place in government settings, especially surrounding UAP and Inhumans. David claimed that he was informed of a multi-decade Pentagon program that sought to locate, collect, and reconstruct UAP. He interviewed over 40 co-workers in 4 years and came to the conclusion that the government is currently in possession of UAP. He said that he actually knew the exact location of some of the technology, as the information was provided directly to him. David claims that the program is funded above congressional oversight, being bankrolled by a misappropriation of funds. He also claimed to be aware of colleagues who had recovered from non-human biologics derived from UAP crashes. He claims that his testimony was based on information given to him by trusted individuals who all had a long-standing record of legitimacy. He said that the sources shared proof in photographs, documentation, and official oral testimonies. When asked if he had known of anyone who lost their lives due to inhuman materials, Grusch responded, "I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities." Okay, a little sketchy, and the whole thing sounds a little off to me. Members of the government have come forward, painting David as a madman who doesn't know the difference between real and fake, but David was accompanied by 2 officers who both corroborated his story story? Is it possible that David was telling the truth? Is there an organization that is currently conducting alien testing right under our noses? All I will say is that David's claims sound eerily familiar. The fact that David came forward with this testimony and was immediately labeled as an insane pathological liar shows how concerned the government is with becoming an object of suspicion. Painting people as crazy is a pretty common deflection tactic. I mean, how many times have you heard gaslighting being thrown around this year? Number 1. Colonel Philip J. Corso. Alright, so this is the extraterrestrial tea on Colonel Philip J. Corso and his wild claims from the book The Day After Roswell, which was co-written with William J. Burns and dropped in 1997. Get ready for a trip to the Roswell UFO incident in 1947, you know, the one where a UFO allegedly belly flopped near Roswell, New Mexico. So, Colonel Corso was not your average colonel. He said he was part of the Foreign Technology Desk at the Pentagon. His job? To dive into the mysteries of foreign tech. But he claimed he wasn't just handling your run-of-the-mill gadgets. He was knee-deep in overseeing the distribution of alien technology and rubble from none other than the very, very well-known alien debris site, the Roswell crash. According to Corso, the waste and debris from the Roswell crash is akin to a sci-fi garage sale. Fiber optics, night vision gear, and integrated circuit chips. Corso said that the military came down on the public spread of information and started a covert program to reverse engineer the found out-of-this-world contraptions. Suddenly, lasers, microchips, and Kevlar became a weapon science experiment. It's like the current Roswell gift shop, but with an added twist of Cold War strategic advantage. Corso wasn't shy about talking about his experience working with these found objects. Okay, he shouted from the rooftops that alien tech infusion into our everyday gadgets was a game changer. Lasers? Thank you, Roswell. Microchips? Yep, Roswell too. Kevlar? You guessed it. Straight from the advanced alien tech that landed in our feeble desert. He even claimed that these advancements gave the USA their upper hand during the Cold War. Because if humans do anything well, it's turning things into weapons. It's like we just can't help it or something. According to Corso, the government wasn't ready to disclose the intergalactic discovery to the public. There was apparently a full-blown government cover-up, and he insisted it was all orchestrated to keep the public in the dark about the true origins of these mind-blowing advancements. The military, according to Corso, was like the secret funder and provider of gifts, like Santa of the alien world, quietly slipping extraterrestrial tech-filled packages to defense contractors and researchers without a whisper of the extraterrestrial origin. The Roswell incident and its aftermath are a wild ride through the unknown. Buckle up, space enthusiasts, because Colonel Corso took us on a trip from a crashed UFO to lasers and microchips with a side of government secrecy. Who needs Netflix when you've got Roswell, right? That brings us to the end of today's video.
Number 5. The Navy pilots. Since the release of the UAP documents, the new nomenclature, UFO fever has been in the air more than ever since Roswell. We've got open confirmation that the US government, the Pentagon, is researching actively the possibility of alien craft outright. That's the craziest thing that's ever happened in my life. In September 2019, Navy spokesperson Joe Gradisher confirmed that 3 recently released videos by the military contain evidence of unidentified aerial phenomenon. Like, that's it. This is the Navy, the government pointing to a video and going, yeah, that's an unidentified flying object that we don't know about. They're not saying it's a weather balloon. They're not saying it's stars. They're not outright saying it's an alien, but they're certainly implying it. The Navy agreed that they would confirm the sightings this time because pilots encounter bizarre sightings all the time, but are usually too concerned to report the sightings because of the stigma attached to previous theories about what may or may not be in those videos. Put gently, it means that the Navy felt like they had to comment on this thing so that pilots would feel comfortable admitting that maybe they're seeing UFOs without feeling like a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracist. The videos in question include reports from the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, released from 2017 to 2018. They feature long, oblong-shaped objects captured with infrared that appear in the Earth's atmosphere before rapidly disappearing from view. Now, really interestingly here is these aren't the only pill-shaped cylindrical UFOs that have been spotted recently. There were 2 videos from 2015 that came out, and before that, there was a Navy case involving these in 2004, and even on the rest of this list, you'll see a cylindrical cigar-shaped UFO in a sighting from the 40s. So this sort of thing does happen a lot. Now, the purpose of the Navy investigating all this stuff, it's more focused on safety hazard and threats of national security, but hey, at the same time, they may not be willing to talk about it so brazenly, but they definitely are checking just a little bit to make sure they are aliens. But they definitely know more than they're letting on. This footage released only makes up a tiny fraction of what the US Navy and other service branches encounter. One pilot, Lieutenant Graves, claims that in his 10 years flying for the Navy, he thinks he's probably encountered, I don't know, thousands of UFOs in his time. Those are his words. Now, who is to say how many of those might just actually be unidentified flying objects, birds, scouts, drones, whatever, but who's to say how many of them really were alien craft from outside the planet? And my friends, if you're looking to educate yourself on the matter of extraterrestrials, UAPs, UFOs, well, you've got to know by now Top 5 Scary is the place to be. I see the viewer stats in the videos. You goblins love when we talk about aliens. Well, if you want to keep loving them, click on through. We've got more unexplained sightings in the sky than the CIA. And if you want them delivered hot and fresh, you can subscribe and get them before anybody else. Number 4. Chiles-Whitted case. The Chiles-Whitted encounter is one of the most recognized UFO encounters in American history for how surprisingly credible it seems. It happened shortly after the Roswell incident, when UFO fever was hot on everybody's minds in the States, and it was showing. The sighting occurred in the morning hours of one July 24th, 1948. The two pilots, one Clarence Chiles and John Whitted, were flying approximately 5,000 feet above Montgomery, Alabama on a clear, normal night. Flight was going well, nothing too exciting, but at around 2:45 in the morning, Chiles saw something peculiar. He noticed a dull red glowing light above and ahead of the aircraft, and it wasn't even remotely near Christmas, so it wasn't Rudolph leading the sleigh. He told Whitted that it must be a new type of army jet that was flying in front of them that neither of them had ever seen. They wanted to get a better look at it, and in a matter of seconds, well, they would. When the object flew past the right side of their plane and pulled up with a tremendous burst of flame protruding from its rear, and it zoomed upwards and onwards into the clouds. The two pilots described the object looking like a flying cigar with a cylindrical chassis and 2 decks and windows. Besides the two pilots, one passenger on the flight, one C.L. McKelvey, insisted that during his flight he saw a bright streak of red flashing lights by one of his windows. Now, Chiles and Whitted were obviously pretty darn confused by whatever it was they'd saw. Didn't look like no plane they'd seen before, and the way it moved seemed technologically more advanced than anything the US Army was putting out in the late 40s. Now, the US Army proper would challenge this account, and their scientists insisted. They investigated the report and said that it was probably just a meteor the pilots and passengers had seen, which almost sounds like it might make sense until you stop and think about it for a second, because what meteor has windows and a glowing red light coming from it and propels itself forward and rapidly goes upward? Most meteors I've ever heard of go downwards. And Chiles and Whitted both disagreed with this as well, saying they got a good long look at it and it wasn't a meteor. Whatever it truly was, though, might be lost to history, tragically. Number 3. The Gander, Newfoundland encounter. Our next story comes to us from Gander, Newfoundland, and it happened on February 10, 1951. A U.S. Naval Reserve lieutenant and pilot, Graham Bethune, was occupying the captain's seat of a plane flying near Newfoundland, Canada, when he spotted something unusual, massive, and rapidly approaching towards the plane. It resembled a disc. The co-pilot made a report of what he saw, and this is what he wrote. Take a listen. "I observed a glow of light below the horizon about 1,000 to 1,500 feet above the water. The pilot and I observed its course and motion for about 4 or 5 minutes before calling it to the attention of the other crew members. Suddenly, the object changed direction at an incredible speed and began to pulsate, changing its colors as well. Then, it somehow reversed its course and tripled its speed until at last it disappeared over the horizon." The report would go on to say that whatever this object was, it came within 5 miles of the aircraft, which was proven later by radar evidence. Now, when the plane had landed, the entire crew was detained by intelligence officers and interrogated. At their destination, pilot and passengers were questioned again by naval intelligence and required to sign full disclosure documents. Now, take this next part with a grain of salt. Okay? Because I only found one source on this. But apparently a CIA scientist confidentially interviewed the pilot, and during their interrogation, he showed him a photo of a disc-like object that looked extremely similar to the one they had seen flying over the Atlantic. However, during the interviews, no Navy, Air Force, or CIA men would ever answer any questions related to extraterrestrials. No one would say the word alien, no one was saying UFO, nothing like that. They were trying very hard to downplay that. So what was it then? Because it sounds incredibly suspicious that the interviewers had a photo of something that looked similar to it and weren't saying the word alien at all. Number 2. November 1986 Japanese Airlines flight. Our next one comes to us from a pair of Japanese pilots. In November 1986, Japanese Airlines Flight 1628 was heading over Alaska. Captain Kenju Terauchi and a crew of 2 others were on a flight making routine cargo deliveries to France. Captain Terauchi saw something that caught his attention when he saw blinding lights flashing off at the left and the right of the plane. Now, Initially, he didn't think too much of it. He thought, hey, maybe these are just US fighter jets zipping around. As his plane furthered forward, he realized that the object was flying ahead of him was of the unidentified variety, a UFO, if you will. Tarachi said that it looked like two spaceships had stopped in front of their faces, shooting off lights. The inside cockpit shined brightly, and I felt warm in the face, he wrote. That almost sounds kind of pleasant, to be honest. Captain Tarachi described the objects as being cuboid-shaped spaceships with a jet propulsion system that had horizontal lines of circular exhausts clustered around a dark center. The captain had also reported that when the plane had flown by this object, ground communications were cut out and all radar was blocked. Well, that's kind of odd, isn't it? Pretty interesting. Well, if you thought that was weird, the FAA would agree with it. That's the Federal Aviation Administration, who investigated the report very closely, interrogating Tarachi for everything they could out of the incident. Now, during this questioning, his co-pilot and his flight engineer, they said that they thought the object they saw was just strange lights, but they did agree that they really couldn't easily explain what it was they saw. In the end, the FAA ruled that what it was light refraction through ice crystals suspended in clouds. A bunch of science words. Sure. Number 1, Lieutenant Gorman. Our number 1 spot on this list is a humdinger of a tale. Now, most of us can only hope to maybe someday see a UFO in our lives, but I mean, maybe if you were like me and you watched Star Wars way too many times and you still ask the hairdressers to get your hair cut like Luke Skywalker, not like anybody I know, maybe you dream of flying an X-Wing through the stars, dodging lasers, getting into a cool alien dogfight. It's a shame none of us can claim we've done that, except, you know, George Gorman of the North Dakota National Guard. I don't think anyone would expect there to be anything exciting happening in North Dakota, but one of the best UFO encounters in American history did. Let's take a little listen and learn about it. It was 1948, a year after the New Mexico Roswell incident, while people were still hyper-focused on little gray men and flying saucers. Lieutenant Gorman was flying a fighter jet solo around the skies above Fargo when he saw what he thought was an aircraft around 500 feet below him. He radioed his tower, but the operator told him that there weren't any other planes to be around and that it was a suspicious vehicle. So Gorman told the tower back he was going to investigate the situation and flew in within 1,000 yards to try and positively ID the subject. Gorman said, "It looked to be about 6 to 8 inches, clear white and completely round without fuzz at the edges, and it was blinking on and off. As I approached, the light suddenly became steady and pulled into a sharp left bank. I thought it was making a pass at the tower." Gorman then said he thought the light charged at him. He didn't want to be the first pilot to crash into a UFO, so he readied himself to avoid it, but found the object suddenly shot straight upwards in the air, directly above him, and then disappearing into the clouds. Gorman tried his best to pull up to follow along, but his plane went into a stall while he was trailing it, and the entity had vanished. Back at the air tower, 2 traffic controllers reported they also saw a light flying above the airstrip they couldn't explain, and weren't present on any flight logs. Gorman was questioned about what he saw, and he said he was convinced that it wasn't just a light, that it moved too naturally, that it moved like it was reacting to his movements, as if it was playing a game with him. He said there was thought and precision behind all its maneuvers. We should ask it what it thought about all of that if Gorman was moving too naturally, reacting to all of that. Number 5, the Roswell autopsy. Perhaps one of the most famous pieces of lost alien footage is the infamous Roswell autopsy tape. Maybe you've heard of it. If you're a UFO enthusiast like me, no doubt it's come up before at some point. Roswell was kind of the birthplace of UFO mania, where a lot of the first conspiracy theories and a lot of the public ideas we have about aliens really stem from. If you don't know somehow, the story goes that an alien craft crash landed in Roswell, New Mexico, where it was swiftly apprehended by shadowy government agents looking to pull a curtain over the whole thing. Reverse engineered, studied, down to the pilot of the craft, recovered by FBI scientists. Almost immediately after, hushed whispers and rumors of a recorded alien autopsy set conspiracists and enthusiasts' mind ablaze in equal measures. Recorded footage of an alien body being dissected would be undeniable proof with world-shattering consequences, and would probably make for some pretty good ratings. Well, the Fox network would agree with you, because in 1995, the footage was broadcasted on Fox, presented by legendary thespian and #1 guy to trust in regards to human-alien relations, one Jonathan Frakes. The film broadcast was not the true footage of the autopsy, but rather a high-budget recreation to show for a wider public audience what had happened. The director claims he had seen the original footage from the 1947 autopsy, but couldn't release it. He claims that he spliced shots from the original footage into the faked footage to provide some clarity, but didn't tell us what was real and what wasn't. And he insists that the video wasn't faked, but rather a reconstruction for educational purposes. Now, despite only being a reenactment, the special effects of the footage are remarkable. It does look pretty believable. unbelievable. It was helmed by industry legend Stan Winston, the special effects warlock responsible for bringing the Predator and the aliens alike. The alien body in the footage was filled with sheep guts, chicken entrails, pig knuckles, and raspberry jam to create the illusion of an alien filled to bursting with foreign organs, and probably tasted halfway decent with a little bit of soy sauce. So was the footage ever actually real, or was it all just cooked up to sweep up viewers on a dwindling TV season? The director maintains always that what he saw was real, he just wasn't allowed to show it, and did his best to show us what happened. There's an interesting discussion to be had there, I think. Was he just showing how easy it is to fraud something, manipulate people into believing whatever they see? Who's to say if the true footage ever did come out, we would even believe it? We would probably just dismiss it the exact same way. But if you want to see way more scary footage, real or not, dismissible or provable, we have got loads and loads of that for you to enjoy. So click through, stay a while, and get scared all night long with top 5 scary. I'll be here the whole night and in this building. Number 4, Edgar Mitchell. The thing about most alien sightings is that they don't always come from the most reputable of sources. You know, it's usually a random internet post, maybe a blurry shot from an iPhone kind of thing, posted on Reddit with a caption like, "What is this?" Or, you know, it's somebody who was walking home late at night and saw some lights in the sky and didn't know it was a plane. And while I think we should respect the voice of the people and the common man, it'd be nice if we got someone with a little bit of clout to their name. Well, luckily we've got more than a few astronauts who've seen bizarre things up there and are willing to share their stories. Edgar Mitchell is one such man. He stood on the face of the moon before, he helped save the Apollo 14 mission from becoming a disaster, he's the 6th man to ever walk on the moon, and he is a lifelong defender and believer in aliens and UFOs. Mitchell claims that he's seen things that prove existence of life outside the planet. First and foremost, he is a firm believer of the Roswell conspiracy, and he insists that all those stories are true and that the military has been hiding the truth behind what happened at Roswell for decades, adding on to say that it was buried, and the military propagated a covert movement to discredit everything that had happened at Roswell, to deter people from taking any news about UFOs and flying saucers seriously, dismissing it forever as tinfoil hat stuff. Mitchell claims that NASA believes the public wouldn't be able to handle the truth. Come on, we're ready. We're ready, we're all ready, we're big enough now to know the truth. It's like the tooth fairy, we're grown up, we know where the quarters are coming from, just tell us. And Edgar Mitchell's been trying to just tell us. In 2004, Edgar Mitchell told a Floridan newspaper that he knew there was a secret cabal inside the American government that took in and studied alien corpses, and that after JFK was removed from office, the group did not answer to the president and didn't include the commander-in-chief in their briefings. He was quoted saying, "They all know that UFOs are real. The question is where they are coming from. A shadowy organization existing outside the president's control with insider knowledge on aliens and trying to suppress the public." Did Mr. Mitchell just casually confirm the men in black are real? Now, NASA themselves obviously denied all of Mitchell's statements, but obviously they would. What government is going to throw their hands up and admit that they have been slicing up alien bodies on the side? Number 3, the first flying saucer. Now, while the Roswell, New Mexico incident was the UFO sighting that really shot alien sightings into the mainstream public consciousness and kind of defined what alien sightings look like, you know, the idea of little gray or green men and flying saucers, it was obviously far from the first alien sighting ever recorded, just kind of the most popular. But not even a few weeks earlier, there was actually another famous sighting, and one that's thought to be the progenitor for sightings of UFOs being thought of as flying saucers. Kenneth Arnold was an American aviator. Unlike most UFO sightings, Kenneth never changed his story once, never made any kind of surrealist, outrageous claims, and stuck to the same story for the rest of his life. He saw weird saucers in the air he couldn't explain. Well, let's take a listen. It was 1947, June the 24th, weeks before Roswell, which occurred in July 1947. Mr. Arnold was flying his private plane over Washington by Mount Rainier. I've never been to Washington, so you guys gotta forgive me. He was looking for a recently downed transport plane that had a $5,000 bounty the US military was offering in exchange for its finding. As he was approaching the summit, Arnold noticed that he saw 9 blinding flashes of light hovering up above. When looking in closer, they resembled ships but looked like discs. Arnold said that he saw them flying in a bizarre pattern, with each position diagonally together, reporting that it reminded him of the tail of a kite. Arnold was an aviation expert and said that the craft seemed far more advanced than anything human beings were capable of at the time, moving at unbelievable speeds. He landed at a nearby airport and told crew that he saw something bizarre he couldn't rationalize, worried that perhaps it could have been missiles being fired at Washington. Reporters interviewed him and he was pressed for several questions, but no one could corroborate or figure out just exactly what it was was he had seen. Arnold was questioned by the Army as well, who took his claims remarkably seriously, as he was a fairly respected and reputable man, and there wasn't really the same culture surrounding aliens and UFOs, and as such, his claim was met with genuine worry. No one ever figured it out, but the story of them being saucers, combined with a saucer seen in New Mexico, led to the public perception of UFOs picturing them as saucers for the better part of 60 years, pretty much to this day. Number 2, the Travis Walton abduction. Now, abduction stories can sometimes be a little much to believe, even for those with the most open minds who want to believe. You know, they all seem kind of the same. It's somebody you maybe can't trust driving home late at night, saw something strange, they woke up in a blinding light room, and they got poked and prodded by little gray men. Well, Travis Walton's story is not dissimilar to that. It's pretty out there even by abduction standards, but it's too juicy to pass up, so pop open those ears. In 1975, Travis Walton was working as a logger and was facing a fairly routine day, 6 other loggers and him driving around in the forest when they saw something incredibly bright shining at them through the treetops. One of the men claimed it looked like a flattened disc, a saucer of sorts even. Walton stepped out of the bed of the truck to investigate and was struck by some invisible force that knocked him backwards. The rest of the crew panicked and drove away. Huge faux pas, I'll say, leaving your coworker behind after being struck by an alien, but okay, you think you know somebody. When the crew returned, Walton had vanished. Walton awoke and had thought that he'd been taken to a hospital because he'd found himself in a blindingly bright room and could hear people moving around him. But it wasn't until he got a good look at his doctors that he knew something was amiss. 3 feet tall, with brown, quarter-sized pupils, with marshmallow-like skin. Walton freaked out, obviously, as one would probably do, and was swiftly restrained by his captors. He tried to fight them off, but was greeted by a tall creature he said resembled a humanoid, but was masked by an intimidating helmet, a kind of Darth Vader looking thing. The masked creature took Walton and escorted him back into the operating room and put a translucent mask over his face. And Walton drifted out of consciousness again, unsure if anything was real. The next thing he remembers is walking alongside a highway as if nothing had ever happened. He eventually finds his way to a phone and called his brother-in-law, who panically asked what had happened. It turned out that Walton had been gone for 5 days, and he was untraceable. Search parties had formed looking for him, sent dogs and choppers tracked him from the woods, but no one could find any sign of him, as if he'd blinked out of existence and then blinked right back. Travis swore what happened to him was real, a real abduction, and he's maintained that story ever since that fateful week in 1975. Now, if you think this story is fascinating and you're upset that nobody recorded any of it and there wasn't any footage of what Travis described, well, the tragic news is, yeah, it doesn't exist. You can, however, watch a 90s sci-fi movie that is directly based off Travis's case called Fire in the Sky. I've never seen it, but I'm sure it's on Amazon Prime or something. It's got Robert Patrick from Terminator 2. He's in it. He's a good actor. Yeah, check it out. And number 1, the Rendlesham Forest incident. The incident and conspiracy at Roswell, New Mexico is one of the most famous events in UFO culture. This incident is considered England's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest incident. Few other alien sightings can boast this many government witnesses, memos, and strange proof. Let's paint the scene. It was December 26, 1980. Oh, nice and festive and Christmas themed. Surrounding Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England was a series of Air Force bases and US Army personnel. 2 of these stationed officers were John Burroughs and Jim Peniston. On this fateful night, the 2 of them were concerned by shining bright lights that were seen flying above the base, worrying that it could perhaps have been a threat or a spy plane scouting out their location. Burroughs said that he thought the lights looked like a beacon summoning people over, and over 40 people on the base all agreed, reporting seeing the lights and sharing their concern. So the 2 men were sent over to Rendlesham Forest to investigate. In their official document, the 2 men claimed that they had seen a strange, shining, triangular object that was pulsing with colored lights. Neither of the men recognized it as an aircraft from any military across the globe. The craft had seemed far too advanced for anything of this world. Black and made out of a smooth, opaque glass. It didn't appear to have any wings or landing gear or even really any methods of propulsion or exhaust. The men describe it as covered in hieroglyphic-like symbols etched onto the hull of the vessel all over. Neither of the men could identify the glyphs as anything they'd seen before. Duh, it's alien stuff. As the craft touched down, nearby animals were being driven into a frenzy, and the airmen's equipment started malfunctioning, communications equipment cutting out. The 2 personnel could no longer call back to the base. Now, not even 2 days later, the Rendlesham UFO was spotted again. 2 days later, the same strange lights were seen hovering above the bases surrounding Rendlesham. This time, the crews came significantly more prepared, waiting and ready for the UFO to make contact. The patrol group had found depressions in the ground, and their Geiger counters started blowing up with noise. And the group had known that they'd come across where the UFO had been, and And then, right on time, the patrol saw the same craft flying above overhead, disappearing into the night. Years passed, and we're still no closer to understanding just what occurred with those faithful sightings. And we may never know.
Number 5. Leland Melvin. American engineer and now retired NASA astronaut Leland Melvin has spent hundreds of hours in space. Literally hundreds. Leland holds 4 honorary doctorates for his service in education, the sciences, and philanthropy. Doctorates. I'm just saying that before the comments start rolling in saying he's just another wacko. He's crazy. They're not wackos, people. Any of them. They've been screened so many times by so many people with so many tests, they have to be damn well near perfect before going up on or in NASA's budget. Before his career with NASA, Leland was actually All-American for football. Detroit Lions, Toronto Argos. Guy made the NFL and then said, you know what? I think I'm gonna be an astronaut. Like, give this guy a Netflix movie, would ya? He was selected by NASA in 1998 after getting injured with a football career. Guy goes from the turf to working at NASA Langley Center. This guy's put in time, both down here and up there. Mission after mission with NASA. He's got quite the practice at the whole floating around thing. When Leland was pressed about otherworldly visitors and his ideas about the cosmos, he said this when he was working up in orbit. He had seen something translucent, curved and organic looking when he was working with fellow astronaut Randy Bresnik. The pair of them, called down to NASA to ask what it could be. NASA's official response was, probably ice. Yeah, nice and specific there, Houston. Thank you for that. When has NASA ever said probably? Melvin dismissed this and figured it was NASA's explanation to just cover it up. Like, who's more qualified here? That's all I'm asking. When the most qualified people are like, yeah, I can't tell if that's frozen water or a full-on mothership, Houston. Either they shouldn't be up there at all, or we need some more Windex on those windows there, NASA. Huh? Number 4, Ivan Wagner. As always, if you dig what we do here at Top 5 Scary, make sure you hit that like button or comment down below. It really helps the channel out. Have you ever seen a UFO out there? Yeah, you. Have you seen one? Comment down below with some details about your experiences. I know I have. Twice now. Hence the obsession with all this stuff. Those Reddit rabbit holes, boy oh boy. Speaking of falling into a wormhole of conspiracy and who said what, astronaut Ivan Wagner, or I should say cosmonaut Ivan Wagner, since he's Russian by birth, and although he's bunking up with some roomies up there on the ISS, he was on the ISS as a first timer just back in 2020. Does NASA initiate rookies up there? Like pull pranks on the newbies? Like no gravity, just unbuckle you while you sleep, float you out, you know? He and fellow Russian Anatoly Ivanishin were working up there alongside Chris Cassidy, the American commander of said expedition. When Wagner was orbiting the Earth, he might have captured some footage of UFOs, better known as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. It's the jargon nowadays. The aurora lights behind Earth's beautiful curves was being recorded from the ISS when he saw a string of really weird lights moving in a really weird way. He labeled the video Space Guests. Wagner tweeted the vid, which apparently shows the aurora australis near Antarctica, and then all of a sudden this blob of organized lights just cruises on over the globe. Looks like a blob of like glitter just trucking across space. Like, what is that? Of course, NASA didn't follow up. Like, what are they gonna say? Oh yeah, those are stars that move and blink, I think. I mean, no? Space junk. Yeah, space debris and swamps and things. Also, what a lame excuse. Space junk? Okay, so you're saying there's lots of litter up there? That's what you're saying? That's what just zipped over my house silently, defying gravity and lasered up my cow? Yeah, I don't think so, NASA. Number 3, Chris Hadfield. Retired Canadian astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot, and musician. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Hadfield flew 2 missions and also served as commander on the International Space Station. Before his career as an astronaut, he served in the Canadian Armed Forces for 25 years as an air commander fighter pilot. So he has the credentials to say the least. In 1992, Hadfield was accepted into the Canadian astronaut program. He first flew in space in 1995, and since then, he says he's seen tons of stuff up there just zipping around that even a man with all those credentials says he can't explain. Quote, I've seen countless things in the sky, but he has a pretty cool take on it. He doesn't keep it on the DL, he doesn't boast, and he doesn't panic. Seems like Chris has the mentality like, quote, to see something in the sky that you don't understand and then to immediately conclude it's intelligent life from another solar system is the height of foolishness and lack of logic. However, Chris seems to have a little dirt on Mars that maybe we all don't. He said, I think the fundamental question is that Mars was a lot like Earth 4 billion years ago when life first formed. So if it happened here, Did it happen there? It would be evident somewhere in the geologic records. All we need is one fossil for proof. He thinks there could be potentially alien life in the clouds of Venus or on the distant moons of one of our gas giants. Researchers have suggested that there could be microbial life in the clouds of Venus because of the presence of ammonia, which on Earth is a key indicator of aquatic life. Aquatic life, eh? Atlanteans? Hadfield on the UAP phenomenon, quote, "We have 7 people living up there. We've been sending people to space since I was born. I spent half a year off planet looking everywhere. It makes no sense at all that intelligent life somewhere from not our solar system could cross interstellar space and just sneak around and only be caught on some strange video by fighter pilots. It just doesn't pass any basic sniff test or logic. It's fun, it's exciting, but if you use reason, the whole argument falls apart," end quote. Okay, Chris Hadfield, keep your secrets for now, you polite Canadian you. Wait till people start looking into Paul Hellyer, another very polite Canadian with some secrets of his own. Until then, you keep distracting us up there with that guitar, Chris. I see you, Jake Sully. Number 2, Michael Collins. NASA veteran and the very first driver up there, Mr. Michael Collins himself, served as command module pilot on the historic Apollo 11 mission in 1969. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon for the very first time, saying those very first famous lines we all know so well, Collins was back parking that thing up there. Mr. Collins stayed up there by himself in lunar orbit, waiting for the safe return of his crewmates. I can't even stay in a basement with the lights off by myself. Imagine being up there just drifting in the currents of matter, like being in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, no way, dude. The astronaut retired from NASA in 1970 and spent his free time answering questions on Twitter. Apparently, he has gotten some really interesting buzz. Mr. Collins invited the interweb to chat, saying, quote, "Are we alone? Hashtag Ask Michael Collins." And boy, oh boy, did he get some responses. Everything from wackos who like aliens to very, very high-ranked generals and pilots who are apparently also wackos who like aliens for talking about this. Collins, quote, "I used to think that NASA sent me to the wrong place, to the moon, because I think Mars is a much, much more interesting place," end quote. Collins has talked about it in the past about the possibility of alien life existing beyond Earth and doesn't shy away from discussing the topic in full. In 1999, for instance, he even argued on the topic of life developing in other parts of this infinite cosmos. So maybe it has then. He wrote in his book saying, quote, "I am alone now. Truly alone, and absolutely isolated from any known life. Although I may feel like I'm the same person, I also feel that I am different from other people. I have been places and done things you simply would not believe." Collins circled the moon once every 2 hours. What's scarier, walking on an unknown rock that apparently no one's ever visited, or flying all the way around it by yourself in the pitch black with no communications? Collins achieved the rank of Major General. He left NASA in 1970 to join the State Department and later became director of the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington. One of the most key players in this whole thing. Michael Collins sadly passed in 2021. Number 1, Buzz Aldrin. Of course, the poster child for the whole phenomenon itself, Mr. Edwin Eugene Aldrin Jr. American astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot with a doctorate of science and astronautics. This guy is overqualified, okay? 3 spacewalks in 1966, Gemini 12 mission in 1969, Apollo 11 mission. He and mission commander Neil Armstrong were the first 2 people to land on the moon. Quote, "There was something out there, close enough to be observed. What could it be?" According to Aldrin, on Apollo 11 to the moon, quote, "I observed a light out the window that appeared to be moving alongside us. What could that have been other than a spacecraft from another country or another world? It was either the rocket that had separated from us or the 4 panels that moved away when we extracted the lander, right?" After he returned from his missions, he was convinced he saw aliens while he was out there. Credentials aside, he took a lie detector test, people, which he passed with flying colors. In an interview with C-SPAN Buzz, he talked about the future potential of Earth's moon for humanity. He added a little extra info that might have gained the spark to go back, regarding a certain monolith on a moon. Quote, "Visit the moon Phobos of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato object that goes around Mars once in every 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're gonna say, 'Who put that there?' And you bet, Buzz, I'll be the first one to ask that."
I'm just gonna call this first sighting or series of sightings February 2023. February was quite a month for unidentified flying objects, and I wanted to start this list off with these sightings because of how recent they are. They may not be as definitive or weird as some of the other sightings on this list, but these were pretty high-profile stories, and it's always far more interesting when the government is involved in these things. Just adds another layer of credibility to it. Not that the government doesn't lie or withhold information about things, I think we all know that that happens, but the fact that it's being reported on so heavily means it's pretty big news. So, the story here is that several mysterious high-altitude objects were shot down in February of 2023 over various airspaces. We had objects being spotted in Canada, United States, Latin America, China, Eastern Europe. It started when several unidentified objects were shot down over Alaska, the Yukon, and Lake Huron. The general of NORAD, Glenn D. Van Herk, made a statement saying the objects could be benign, but it wasn't 100% sure. When asked if they could be of alien origin, though, that's the question we're all digging to ask, he said he just wasn't ruling anything out. I'm just interested by this. It really seems like the government and military agencies are starting to become more open to the idea of extraterrestrial life, or maybe some of them already are fully aware of their presence. Either way, though, it seems like it's being discussed more. It's not being written off as nonsense like it has been in the past. So just that aspect alone is interesting to me. Now, here's another interesting thing about these cases. There were recovery attempts made, to find these objects that had plummeted towards the Earth. Unfortunately, they all landed in areas that aren't all that accessible, so it made for a pretty difficult recovery process, and the missions were pretty soon abandoned. Now, that's what they say, but what if the government actually did recover something that they just aren't ready or even willing to show us? Could be the case. You never know. Next up, we have the Oumuamua. Oumuamua, it's a hard word to say. I'm gonna try not to say it too many times on here. Old news with this one, right? It's that weird cylindrical object that was spotted flying through space. It's definitely been talked about plenty of times, including on this channel, I'm sure, but it's a recent article dated March 7th of this year that I'm referring to here. So, like I said before, I think when the government, military, or academics get involved with UFO type stories, it just makes it far more interesting to me. Not that I'd totally disregard some farmer in Ohio saying he was probed by a little gray, bug-eyed alien, but I don't know. People like attention sometimes. And a recent article written by Sean Kirkpatrick, head of the Pentagon's AARO, or All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which specializes in unidentified flying objects, and a Harvard professor named Avi Loeb, they discussed the possibility that objects such as Oumuamua, spotted back in 2017, could be of alien origin. So, pretty exciting. I mean, these are two learned, intelligent people writing an official document theorizing the possibility of alien life. I mean, that's just cool. The article does say, however, that the objects, like the Oumuamua, could be, quote, a parent craft that releases many small probes during its close passage to Earth. So probes observing Earth could be good or bad or neutral, depending on whether you're a glass half empty or half full type person. Now, they didn't just discuss that object, they were looking at a variety of unidentified objects or probes, and they wanted to speculate that these crafts could potentially power their batteries from starlights, and that maybe Earth's water could be fuel. It's pretty wild stuff, and yes, a lot of it is speculative, but the fact that a highly respected scientist that spent 20 years studying physics is proposing these ideas, pretty fascinating. Something I also want to mention about people who are just very skeptical about aliens even showing any interest at all in Earth. You'll hear them say stuff like, well, extraterrestrial beings with all this advanced technology, they just wouldn't be interested in anything we're doing. It'd be like, God observing ants or something. And who's to say, first of all, that God doesn't like observing ants? And, even if that is the case, I mean, like, how can you really know that for sure? How on earth could we possibly know what beings from another planet are interested in? We don't know what kind of hobbies they have. It's also kind of counters their other argument, because it's like, yeah, spacefaring extraterrestrials would be leagues ahead of us in terms of intelligence, but I know what they're thinking. I know what they like. just doesn't make any sense. The Texas Zoo creature. So we take a look at a lot of UFOs on this channel, so I thought I'd change it up a bit and take a look at a bizarre looking creature instead. This picture was taken just 1 year ago, back in May of 2022. It was taken by a security camera at a zoo in Amarillo, Texas at around 1:30 a.m. A bizarre figure was spotted on a security camera, and before you say it's just a lion on its hind legs, which would also be pretty freaky, mind you, this figure was outside of the zoo, so it's not one of the animals unless one of them escaped. Now, why am I putting this on an alien list? A lot of people think it looks like a werewolf or Sonic the Hedgehog or something, but I don't know. To me, it looks pretty alien. Look at the elongated back part of the head. It almost looks like a xenomorph from Alien or something. Plus, I find the presence of alien life to be far, far more likely than werewolves or other kinds of fantasy-based creatures like that. I mean, like, who knows, but there's a lot of unexplored space out there and a lot of explored space here on Earth. I think we'd have spotted a werewolf by now if they existed. There's also a big chance that this could just be a trick of the camera. Security footage can be kind of janky sometimes, or perhaps we have a zoo prankster on our hands, or maybe this is a super deformed person. If that's the case, I hope they're okay. Regardless though, this is an odd figure to see in the middle of the night outside of a Texas zoo. And trust me, I know my Texas zoos. The Wales UFO. I didn't know this, but it turns out there are a lot of UFO sightings in Wales. I don't know what the aliens' fascination is with Wales, but reports date all the way back to the 1940s. Actually, all the way back to the 12th century, but I don't know if I give much credence to stuff dating back that far. Apparently, religious pilgrims believed to have seen a fire-breathing dragon erupt from the sea and fly into the sky. Could have been a UFO and they just didn't know what to make of it and just called it a dragon, but anyway, way off topic. The UFO in question here was spotted back in September of 2016 by a police helicopter at around 9 p.m. It was only visible on the chopper's thermal camera and seemed to be moving at a speed of 106 miles per hour over the Bristol Channel. Full video of the footage was released by a former cop, Gary Hasseltine, who has been urging the UK government to come forward and reveal what they know about UFOs. What's also interesting about this one is that the object was moving against the wind, so it is or was being operated one way or another. It's not like it was some object caught up in a wind current or something. Police also stated years after the event that it could have possibly been a drone, but they were struggling to keep up with it, so it'd have to be a pretty fast one. There are drones that reach that 100-mile-per-hour speed, but they're pretty high-end. Your common drones clocking at around 45 to 70 miles per hour, so again, who knows, but it's possible. And coming in at our number one spot, we have aliens in Bolivia. I wanted to finish off with this one because we have reports of both your typical UFO sighting and reports of actual aliens being spotted here. So we're getting some real bang for your buck with this one. The story just happened back in March of this year, and it all started when residents of a small village in the La Paz area of Bolivia claimed to have spotted a mysterious green light in the sky. A bunch of people pulled out their phones and started filming. They were in absolute awe and said it looked to be some kind of alien spacecraft. And then 2 days later, little people were spotted running around the town at night. One villager named Rita Marquez reported to news outlets describing the creatures as little, almost like goblins, and is quoted saying they were miniature beings, like those little people who appear to children. And it felt like something creepy was happening, like they were welcoming their friends, you know? Now, I'm not sure exactly what she means by that, but it's definitely odd. This bizarre situation all culminated with several residents claiming to have found one of the small creatures curled up dead in a gutter one morning, the body of which soon vanished. So we clearly have a lot going on here. Weird lights in the sky, possibly even an aircraft spotted, little beings running around the streets at night, a dead one, unfortunately. It's all pretty weird, and sure, it's possible it's just a hoax or even maybe mass hysteria, but there's also a good chance that it isn't. I love stories like this where there are multiple witnesses. Again, it adds another layer of credibility to the whole thing because obviously it's a lot harder to organize a hoax and get multiple people involved. People people talk, they let secrets out. Another interesting thing about this one is that authorities did get involved and told the villagers to kind of stay hushed about the whole incident, so maybe they just thought everyone was nuts and didn't want to spread misinformation, but perhaps there is something going on here that they need to cover up for one reason or another. Either way, though, something happened. Are they among us? We may soon find out.
Number 5, Al Worden. American test pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut Alfred Worden was the module pilot for the Apollo 15 lunar mission in 1971. One of the 24 people who have flown to the moon. Woo! He's got a couple of firsts, though. He orbited it 74 times in the command module. He was the first to drive a moon car. After Apollo 15 reached lunar orbit and his crewmates departed, and Worden spent 3 days alone in his module. That's terrifying. Traveling the furthest out from any other human. After he returned, the crew and him became involved in a NASA controversy, however. Not over leaked alien info, but over postage stamps they had taken to the moon. Yeah, big no-no, apparently. They were reprimanded by NASA and did not fly in space again. Worden remained at NASA until 1975, then entered a private sector. And then it gets weird. On a British television morning show, Al Worden started talking about some interesting stuff. They asked him, "Why should we keep going back to the moon?" He paused and replied, "Survival. Survival of our species." Worden also rejected the notion that humans could colonize planets within our solar system, calling them unsustainable. Then he claims he knows where to find habitable planets. When pressed on aliens if he believes them or not, he said, "Yes. I've been asked that question hundreds of times. Yeah, we are the aliens, though. We just think there's somebody else. But we were the ones who came from somewhere else because somebody else had to survive. They got in their little spaceship and they came here and they landed and they started civilization here. And if you don't believe me, go get books on the ancient Sumerians and see what they have to say about it. They'll tell you right up front." End quote. Okay, when you hear an astronaut say that, kind of jarring. Number 4, Roswell. As always, if you dig what we do here on Top 5 Scary, make sure you hit that like button. Birth of the UAP phenomenon. 1945, the US's first nuclear explosion. 1946, first underwater nuclear explosion. 1947, the first crash flying saucer. Coincidence? I think not. Especially since they've been known to hover around nuclear bases. Probably for the better. Humans are kind of the worst. Local rancher Mac Brazel finds the wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico. Sheriff Wilcox shows RAAF's commanding officer Colonel Blanchard the materials, and during the night, the Air Force combs the entirety of the property, apparently harboring 2 small injured alien bodies. Taking them, of course, to Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico that night, and the very next morning, the Roswell Air Force makes a statement claiming they have recovered a crashed flying disc in local newspapers. Boom! History, baby! Photographs of Jesse Marcel, the head intelligence officer who investigated and recovered some of the debris. The very next day, the Army retracts their statement, and all of a sudden, a high-altitude weather balloon. Can you believe that, huh? AKA the birth of a conspiracy theory. Nuclear fission explosions, weather balloons. Something's not adding up here. Number 3, Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Dean Mitchell was a U.S. Navy officer, aviator, test pilot, engineer, NASA astronaut, and of course, a ufologist. Ufology is the pseudo term for somebody who studies the UFO phenomenon. I don't think there's a degree you can get that in. If so, I'm signing up. What school? Sorry? He was the lunar module pilot of the Apollo 14 in 1971 and spent 9 hours working on the lunar surface. He was the 6th person to walk on the moon. Yeah, he was walking while Worden was up there drifting in the currents of space. Mitchell publicly expressed his opinions and that he was sure that there were thousands of UFOs recorded since the early 1940s belonging to other planets. Thousands. Dateline NBC conducted an interview with Mitchell in 1996. He talked about meeting with officials from 3 different countries who claimed that they had met extraterrestrials in person. Quote, "The evidence for alien contact was very strong and classified by governments who were covering up visitations and existence of alien bodies in places such as Roswell, New Mexico." Mitchell's book, The Way of the Explorer, discusses his journey. In 2004, he told the St. Petersburg Times that the US government was studying alien bodies and that this group had specifically stopped briefing US presidents since the 1960s. He said, quote, "We all know that UFOs are real. Now, the question is, where do they come from?" In 2008, Mitchell then was interviewed and claimed that Roswell crash was in fact the aliens that had contacted humans several times, but that the government had hidden the truth for more than 60 years. Scary stuff, scary stuff. He sadly passed in 2016. If we just reread the credentials alone, just one more time. Number 2, James McDivitt. James Alton McDivitt is an American test pilot, Air Force pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut who flew in both the Gemini and Apollo programs. After graduating first in his class with a Bachelor of Science degree in Aeronautical Engineering, he qualified as a test pilot at the Air Force. In 1962, McDivitt was selected by NASA for the Gemini 4 mission. In 1965, he saw, filmed, and photographed an object which approached the Gemini 4 as they were orbiting Earth. Over Hawaii, a craft of some sort. The UFO had a long arm sticking out of it. Here's what Major James McDivitt said. I was flying with Ed White. He was sleeping at the time, so I don't have anybody to verify this story, but we were drifting in space when suddenly an object appeared in the window. It's a cylindrical object, white. It had a long arm that stuck out of the side. The film was sent back to NASA and reviewed by some NASA film technicians. One of them selected what he thought was what they were talking about, at least before I had the chance to review it. And it was not the picture. It was a picture of a sun reflection on the window. So what were the pictures that he was talking about? In 1975, McDivitt said, I never made a big deal out of it. It was something I definitely couldn't identify. It looked like a beer can with a pencil sticking out of it. Yeah, I would eventually give up on that too if those were my credentials and people were like, yeah, right, James. When somebody has like 25 years of designing and flying space shuttles around, when they say, hey guys, I'm seeing something up here. It's not like, oh, James, clean those old specs, would ya? Yuck, yuck. Houston, we have a problem. And number 1, Gordon Cooper. Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr., an American aerospace engineer, test pilot, U.S. Air Force pilot, and the youngest of the 7 original astronauts in Project Mercury, the first human space program in the United States. You know the pictures. It looks like they're wearing a tinfoil suit, you know? Old school, old school. After service as a fighter pilot in World War II, he qualified as a test pilot in 1956 and then was selected as an astronaut in 1959. In 1963, Cooper piloted the longest and last Mercury spaceflight, Mercury Atlas 9. 34 hours in space. The first American to spend an entire day in space, the first person to sleep in space, and the last American launched on a solo orbit mission. In Cooper's autobiography, Leap of Faith, co-authored by Bruce Henderson, he recounted his experiences with the Air Force and NASA and an alleged UFO conspiracy. Cooper claimed to have seen his first UFO while flying over Germany, then saw them land in a dry lake bed. Cooper claimed up until his death that the US was indeed covering up UFOs. He said that there were hundreds of reports made by his fellow pilots, many coming from the military pilots on radar. In his memoirs, Cooper wrote that he had seen unexplained aircrafts tons in his career, and that in 1978 he actually testified before the United Nations on the topic. He sadly passed in 2004. He was such a strong advocate for disclosure, and all of these astronauts are remembered as putting their neck and name out on the line for some truth. But I mean, those UFO enthusiasts, huh? They're all wackos, right?
Starting at number 5 is the abduction of Frederick Valentich. It all began on the evening of October 21st, 1978. The 20-year-old Australian pilot took off from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne, embarking on a routine flight in a single-engined Cessna 182L, a plane he's flown countless times in the past. Frederick departed for a training flight to King Island over the Bass Strait between the Australian mainland and Tasmania. However, what began as an ordinary flight soon turned into a bone-chilling encounter with the unknown. As Valentich flew over the Bass Strait, he reported to air traffic control that an unidentified aircraft was following him. He fearfully described the object as having 4 bright lights and flying at unfathomable speeds. Air traffic control attempted to identify the mysterious craft, but could find no evidence of any other aircraft in the vicinity. The situation took a grim turn when Valentich's communication became increasingly distressed, and he reported that the unidentified craft was orbiting him from above. He described the UFO's appearance as metallic and shiny, and praised its maneuverability. It was then that his communications would abruptly cut, with the last thing heard from him being, "It's not an aircraft." Just before the communications were cut off, a loud metallic scraping was heard from Frederick's radio. Neither him nor his aircraft were ever seen again. Speculation around Valentich's disappearance quickly spread, with theories ranging from mundane explanations such as pilot error, mechanical failure, or deliberate disappearance, to the more sensational ones involving extraterrestrial encounters. Based on the information we have, all signs point to Frederick being abducted by some sort of malevolent aliens. The reported scraping noise heard before his communications were cut, likely the sounds of the pilot's aircraft being stuffed into a UFO. The true fate of Frederick Valentich remains a mystery, but the Australian government has assumed him dead after spending many long hours searching for the missing pilot. Where do you think he might be? Let us know in the comments. Moving on, we have number 4, Travis Walton. One fateful night, November 5th, 1975. The Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona, USA. Travis Walton, a 22-year-old logger, and his crew were returning home after a long day of hard work when they noticed some sort of metallic, glowing disc in the sky. Curious to see what it was, Walton and crew drove closer to the flying object. Once they got close enough to investigate, the forestry worker left the car to get a closer look and approached the hovering craft. Witness accounts vary on exactly what transpired, but the consistent chilling detail was that a bright blue-green beam of light suddenly emanated from the UFO, striking Travis and sending him flying several feet backwards, knocking him unconscious. Seeing this, his crew immediately fled the scene, assuming the blast of light killed Walton, leaving him behind. And before you go in the comments calling Walton's friends fake, don't worry. They returned a few minutes later, only to find that both Travis and the UFO had vanished. The crew was quick to report the incident to the local authorities, and a massive search operation was launched to find Travis Walton. No matter how hard anyone looked, nobody could find him. That was until 5 days later. Travis would reappear, disoriented and confused, in Heber, Arizona, nearly 30 miles away from the original abduction site. But the story he had to tell of the intervening days is the truly chilling part of this tale. According to Travis, after being struck by the beam of light, he awoke aboard an alien spacecraft. He described encountering beings he could only describe as humanoid, but with large bald heads and enormous black wraparound eyes. He reported undergoing a grueling medical examinations and being surrounded by strange technology aboard the craft. During his captivity, Travis experienced some form of telepathic communication with the beings, claiming that they conveyed a sense of curiosity and concern, as if they were studying him. Despite all of this, Travis said that he never felt physically harmed by the entities. After what seemed like mere hours to Travis, he found himself back on Earth, disoriented and unsure of where he was and unaware of how much time had elapsed. Travis Walton's encounter with aliens remains one of the most infamous abduction stories of all time, and has certainly earned its place on this list. Oh, next up at number 3 is the many abductions of Russ Kellet. And yes, that's right, you heard many. In fact, Russ Kellet, a 58-year-old man from North Yorkshire, claims he's been abducted upwards of 60 times. And those are just the ones he remembers. The first time Kellet was abducted was when he was 16, when he was traveling home on his motorcycle until he saw a strange tunnel that he'd never seen before. Curious, he drove through the tunnel being faced with a bright light, and then the next thing he remembers is lying down on an operating table, surrounded by 15 feet tall alien men. He related their appearance to Dracula, minus the fangs. Kellet reported that the Dracula doppelgangers pushed a tube down his throat and pumped a mysterious liquid into him. He claims made him a super soldier. He recalls checkered rooms and special glass orbs used to control the navigation of spaceships, and has made several sketches of the parts of his abductions he remembers. Ever since that first abduction, Russ would battle in a multitude of intergalactic wars and conflicts, so he claims, having fought all sorts of different aliens, such as one race of aliens called the Dragos, which are tall and scaly and have dragon-like heads. After the aliens are satisfied with his work, they wipe his memory and send him back to Earth. These missions would vary in length, between lasting for days to lasting for years. However, from the perspective of us on Earth, he is only gone for hours at a time. His explanation for this was that time moves differently on the planets he's sent to fight on, where a day on one planet could be mere seconds on Earth. Skeptics were quick to dismiss Russ's accounts of his second life as an alien super soldier, but he claims he has proof. Last year, Russ was able to capture footage of what he says are several UFOs, the same ones that have been abducting him and taking him to the corners of space to fight space wars. Whether or not his outlandish story is true is for you to decide, but me personally, I'm not signing up to be drafted for any intergalactic wars. Moving on to number 2 is the most iconic abduction story of all time, the Barney and Betty Hill incident. The Barney and Betty Hill incident which occurred on the evening of September 19, 1961, is one of the earliest and most influential cases of alien abduction in UFO history. The Hills, a married couple from New Hampshire, were driving home from a vacation in Canada. As they drove through the White Mountains of New Hampshire, Barney noticed a bright light in the sky that appeared to be following the couple everywhere they went. Out of concern, Barney pulled over to get a better look of the object through binoculars, and to their astonishment, they saw what appeared to be a disc-shaped craft with multicolored lights hovering in the sky. Unsettled, the Hills hastily re-entered their car and started driving again, with the mysterious craft still in pursuit. As they continued their journey, the Hills noticed something strange, that there were 2 hours that had passed that were completely unaccounted for. Over the following days, Barney and Betty began experiencing anxiety, bizarre dreams, and inexplicable memories of the encounter. In hopes of finding answers, the couple consulted with a local psychiatrist who used hypnosis to uncover buried memories of the event. Once under hypnosis, the Hills were able to recall the terrifying events that transpired in those lost 2 hours. They described being taken aboard the vessel and seeing these short aliens with grayish skin, large black eyes, and slits for mouths. Barney and Betty recounted being subjected to intense medical examinations, including the extraction of bodily fluids and having organs observed. They would go on to detail their feelings of fear and helplessness during the encounter too, saying that they felt like they were going to die. A great reminder of why we use anesthesia before performing surgeries, guys. After the media picked up their story, the Hills' lives changed dramatically. They faced both support and skepticism from the public, and their story ignited a broader fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial life worldwide. Despite the enduring controversy surrounding their account, the Hills remained steadfast in their belief that they had indeed encountered beings from another world. Until their passing, they maintained their version of events, and their story has become a touchstone for anyone interested in investigating UFO abductions. What do you guys think? The story is just a hoax, or has it got some credibility? Comment below your thoughts and let me know. Finishing off at number 1 is the Berkshire County incident on the night of September 1st, 1969 in Berkshire County, Massachusetts. Multiple witnesses reported a series of UFO sightings and encounters. Residents all over the town recount seeing a UFO flying above and around Berkshire County, with statements remaining consistent with one another, making this one of the most plausible UFO abduction stories of all time. The most significant incident relating to this UFO involved 2 separate families who claimed to have experienced a close encounter with the unidentified craft. According to the witnesses' accounts, around 9 p.m., Tom Reed, a 9-year-old boy, was driving through the woods with his mother, grandmother, and younger brother. Suddenly, they would see a bright object descending from the sky. In response, Tom's mother stopped the car and they watched the object, which was about 40 feet in diameter, hover above the ground. Then, the next thing the family remembered was being in a different location entirely. They claimed that they were now about a mile down the road and the UFO was gone. The family would go on to report that in the following years, they experienced recurring nightmares and strange encounters, suggesting possible ongoing contact with the extraterrestrial entities. Other families in the town reported similar occurrences and UFO sightings around the same time. Over the years, the incident gained attention and underwent various investigations by UFO researchers and enthusiasts. Many try to explain the strange event as natural phenomena or mass misidentification, but the fact that so many people reported the same thing, it's hard not to believe them. This is the first time an entire town has been affected by alien intervention at the same time, and remains the most frightening cases of abduction due to its sheer scale alone.
Number 5. Hypnotic regression. Many people who claim to have been abducted by aliens are unable to remember a lot of the specific details of their abductions. Because of this and the public stigma against people with alien experiences, many people choose to never come forward, or their stories are written off as delusion. But in the spirit of giving people the benefit of the doubt, let's talk about a certain woman's experience with hypnotic regression. A woman who claims she was abducted by aliens was put under hypnosis in order to give a documentary crew information about the visitors from other worlds. When asked how aliens are able to travel at such incredible speeds, she responded with the following: "I can't explain it, but it's like if they want to get from one point to another point, they remove what's in between, so they don't have to travel that distance. They are instantly from there to there." When asked why aliens are studying humans, the response was, "They are very wary of humankind. Mankind is progressing technology-wise, and soon he's going to come across technology that will allow him to peel back the layers of dimensions. And they want to know all about man for their own benefit. Man's warlike, aggressive, an animal. He's in possession of technology that is more than he is. There's no balance, and they're very wary that he's now on the threshold of many breakthroughs, one of which is peeling back dimensions. It's like an onion skin. You peel back one layer, and there's another one underneath, and another one underneath, and another one underneath. The same with dimensions. They're scared. Do aliens really study humanity out of a fear of what we will do once we discover interdimensional travel? And if so, how do they feel about all the UFOs we have apparently shot down? What do species historically do with groups that they are afraid of? What fate awaits the human race at the hands of these interplanetary visitors? Number 4. Sam the Sandown Clown. Our next story comes from the January-February edition of the British UFO Research Association Journal and concerns an anonymous man going by the alias of Mr. Y, who claims that one October night in the year 1970, he was driving to visit a friend when he saw something hovering over the swamp to his right. It was a huge UFO with several different multicolored orb-like lights brightly illuminating the craft. He got out of his vehicle to observe the craft for a moment and then continued on his way. He looked out his window and realized that the craft was now following him, its lights spinning. Mr. Y got to his friend's house, and the friend was amazed at the guests that had followed him there, before disappearing into a nearby tree line. For years, Mr. Y would see the red orbs following him from time to time, watching him and stalking him. Doubting that anyone would believe him, he kept these encounters to himself until 1973, when his 7-year-old daughter Faye and her friend were playing near Lake Common Road when they heard an eerie wailing sound. They followed the sound to a nearby meadow, and the wailing stopped. They walked over a small bridge when suddenly a blue-gloved hand with 3 fingers appeared from under the bridge. They looked in the small river and saw a strange figure standing in the middle holding a book. He was described as being 7 feet tall and without a neck. He was wearing an odd and tattered costume consisting of a green tunic with a red collar, white pants, and a pointed hat with a black ball on top and 2 antennae. He had a pale white face, lips that never moved, red hair, and triangle holes for eyes. The children watched in shock as the figure hobbled over to a strange metal hut. Not long after, they saw the figure again as he wailed, and then spoke into a microphone asking if they were still there. He then communicated by writing in his book, saying that his name was Sam. They asked if he was a man, and he said no. They asked if he was a ghost, and he said, well, not really, but in a way I am. He said that there were others like him and that he was afraid of being attacked by humans. He invited them into his metal hut, which was filled with wooden furniture and elaborate knobs. The children hung out with Sam for an hour before leaving, and a year later, she told her father about the encounter, telling him that there had been men nearby fixing a post who had acted as though they could not see the strange creature. He had trouble believing her, but he had had enough experiences with aliens of his own that he had to consider the possibility that it was real. Did Mr. Y's daughter really see a strange alien in the woods, or is this just the overactive imagination of a child? In an age where spacecraft are being seen all over the world at an alarming rate, we really can't rule anything out. And what of the UFO stalking Mr. Y? What were they hoping to see? And why was he selected to be the subject of their curiosity? This mystery will likely never be fully unraveled. Number 3, aliens take a baby. Our next entry comes courtesy of phantomsandmonsters.com and describes a 14-year-old visiting the home of some seniors and seeing something more terrifying than they could possibly imagine. As they themselves told it, I witnessed an alien abduction back in 2002 when I was 14. A friend of mine wanted me to help her grandparents set up their computer. I said sure and rode my bicycle to their house. I got there and clouds appeared, so I decided to make this a pretty quick visit. I set up the computer and installed some software for them, showing them all how it works and such. They go back and sit on the couch while I get my backpack to get ready to leave, as their other granddaughter, who is about 6 years old, was sleeping in the other room. All of a sudden, a cold breeze went through the room. It was odd, as all the doors and windows were shut. The grandparents looked towards the kitchen, and what I saw made me freeze in place. There were 3 creatures standing in the kitchen. 2 of them were short, gray alien creatures, with thicker necks than usually described, with the eyes closer to the sides of their heads. They wore silver jumpsuits. In between them was a taller creature that looked like a humanoid mantis, wearing a black robe with a yellow stripe going down the middle. They walked to another room, and a minute later returned with the robed creature, carrying the granddaughter in its arms. It's looking at me, and I get the feeling it knows who I am. I don't know why. I got the feeling, but I did. I was very scared. The grandparents were looking at them too, but not doing anything. I thought, screw this, and fought off all the fear I could and clumsily charged towards them. I didn't even make 3 steps before the grandfather stopped me and told me they will bring her back. The creatures didn't move and continued to look at me. I couldn't get any more words out of my throat because I didn't even know what to think at this point. All of a sudden, a light stretched around them and they vanished. An odd glow remained for a few seconds before fading. After a minute of awkward silence and the grandfather repeating, "She will be brought back," soon I decided to leave. I rode my bicycle home as fast as I could while looking back, hoping that nothing was following me. I didn't sleep that night after I got home. The next day, I told my friend what had happened, and she told me it has happened before. The grandparents and other family members have tried to stop it, but to no avail. They just accepted it with a look of defeat and moved on. The granddaughter was brought back after a few hours. Not long after I witnessed this incident, their whole family moved elsewhere. I've heard from other people who claimed to experience similar events, and I feel they are legit. Why are aliens taking babies away from their families? What are they hoping to learn? And is there some way to stop them? One can hope, but it seems unlikely. Number 2, dream or abduction. This next story is from an anonymous Reddit user who claimed to be abducted and experimented on by aliens before waking up at home with injuries related to the experiment. As he told the story, in July of 2015, back when I was 19, I lived in a house in Southport, Sacramento with 3 other friends. I woke up one night to a light coming through the ceiling of my room, and it lifted me out of my bed. Next thing I know, I'm in some kind of chair and unable to control my body, like I was drugged with something. There were guys that were not human men, but gray people with large black almond-shaped eyes doing stuff with what seemed like medical instruments and machines. I was very terrified. I was unarmed, naked, unable to move. I was so scared. One of them was touching the machine that put the tube down my throat and into my stomach. His hand got close to my face because he had to adjust something holding my head in place. I remember getting a good look at his hand and eyes. They had long fingers with pads at the tips, sort of like salamanders, and they don't have fingernails. Their skin is gray, but kind of like a powdery translucent gray. They had large heads with small necks, so small and thin it didn't make sense. Their arms and fingers were long and skinny too. I was in the chair with my head and jaw held by something so I didn't see their feet. I'd say the tallest probably stood about the height of my lowest rib, and for reference, I'm 5'10". The tube machine sucked out the food I ate earlier that day, and then was pulled out of me. I don't remember how I got there, but then I remembered being in a cage made of some kind of metal that reminded me of aluminum, in a room with curved walls. In front of me was a man who looked a lot like a human, talking to a gray person on a window that lit up a screen like a hologram. The man was tall and looked like a human, except that his skin was very white and his hair was blonde and platinum. He spoke with a gray person on the holo screen in a language I didn't understand. He wore a blue flight uniform of some kind. This man was obviously military of some sort, judging by his uniform. The gray person spoke in a language that sounded like birds chirping. Once the call was over, the holo screen turned into a different display with symbols, and the man turned and walked to me. He crouched down and spoke to me in plain English and said to me, "Everything's gonna be fine. I'm going to get you out of here and take you home." I was so happy to hear that. He opened the cage, and next thing I know, I fell on top of my bed with my back hitting the mattress first. I immediately got out of bed right after I fell. Was this a real alien abduction or simply a horrible nightmare? Typically, I would think it was merely a bad dream, but the user describes extreme pain in his throat for days afterwards from the tube being forced into him. What was the source of this pain if it was simply a dream? Truly a strange encounter to contemplate. Number 1, the alien and the bassinet. Our final story is another from phantomsandmonsters.com about a woman who was asleep in bed next to her baby's bassinet before waking up and seeing something that would make any mother panic. The following is an excerpt from her account. "I turned over on my side, facing the bassinet, and noticed a bright light coming in between the window blinds. I thought out loud, is it morning already? The light was coming in between the blinds, and it was so bright, but the rest of the room was dark. There was also a bright light on the wall next to the window, and I looked up to see where the light was coming from. To my horror, just above the bassinet was an alien's gray face. It was just the head, no upper body, legs, or arms. The head was dark in color, very round, ending in a pointed chin, and there was a small slit for a mouth. The nostrils were small, but the eyes were large and almond-shaped and very shiny black. It had some sort of glass lamp on the top of its head. The light on the wall was projected from the lamp. Then I noticed that the being was looking down at my baby daughter. Oh my god, I couldn't speak. My heart started pounding so hard that I started trembling uncontrollably. It saw me and realized I was looking at it. The being moved towards me and I started screaming and swinging my arms. I remember that I screamed out loud for it to leave. It floated from its original position above the bassinet to just above my face. I remember seeing this light blue fog build up in front of my face, and then in a dreamlike manner, I heard a cooing sound similar to mourning doves. I had the feeling that whoever was talking to me was stern and was telling me that it was for our own good. The woman then describes waking up with a sore spot on her head and the alien being gone without a trace. She insists it was not a dream and that she really saw an alien creature that she believes will one day return. For her sake, let us hope it was simply a dream. Did these people really experience alien encounters, or were they simply mistaken, delusional, or lying?
And we're starting things off with Antarctica. In recent years, Antarctica has gained quite a reputation for being a hotspot for UFO sightings and alleged secret government facilities dedicated to the study of aliens and their technology. An icy continent holding some of the most significant extraterrestrial secrets known to humanity. The remote and inhospitable climate of Antarctica would make for an ideal cover for secretive activities. Who the hell would want to go to Antarctica? It's vast, desolate, the weather is garbage. So not only would most people veer clear of it anyway, but it makes it very difficult for ordinary people to access, allowing secretive operations to take place in secrecy. Some conspiracy theorists point to satellite images and unusual geological formations in Antarctica as evidence of hidden alien bases. There are some who believe that there are mysterious pyramid-type structures there, buried under the ice, that may have been built by some ancient civilization with the help of alien influence, or that these structures were built directly by extraterrestrial visitors who once inhabited Earth and established bases in Antarctica. The governments of the world, particularly the United States and Russia, are said to have established secret research facilities in Antarctica to study alien technology and artifacts. These bases being equipped with advanced scientific equipment and staffed by elite scientists and military personnel. Some even claim that these facilities have made contact with extraterrestrial beings, conducting experiments and exchanging knowledge in secret. There have been whistleblowers and insiders who claim to have worked in these facilities, describing encounters with alien beings, reverse engineering of advanced technology, and human-alien research activities. Next up, we have Popocatépetl volcano in Mexico. Mexico is full of UFO and alien sightings in general. It turns out Mexico is 7th place in the world for the most UFO sightings. There were a bunch of alien fossils brought forth to a Mexican Congress recently, which really made the headlines, but this volcano is a hotbed, pun intended. I could fill up an entire list with the UFO sightings spotted in this one area alone. It's not only one of the most active volcanoes in the country, but it also seems to be one of the most active sites for unidentified flying objects. UFO sightings around the volcano have led to a lot of curiosity amongst locals and researchers. Witnesses describe seeing strange, unidentified flying objects near the volcano, often displaying unconventional flight patterns and characteristics. These sightings have been documented by multiple sources. Plenty of photographs and videos are online. One of the factors contributing to the frequent UFO sightings near Popocatépetl is its geographic location. The volcano stands at an elevation of over 17,000 feet and is situated in a region known for seismic and volcanic activity. So some think that these conditions might attract extraterrestrial interest or create unusual atmospheric phenomena that led to the sightings. Reports of UFOs around the volcano have also drawn the attention of researchers and organizations dedicated to studying unidentified aerial phenomena. These groups aim to collect data, analyze eyewitness accounts, and investigate the true nature of the sightings. Now, I think some of these sightings can obviously be attributed to natural phenomena or aircraft, but there are others that remain unexplained. Expanding things out to Mexican UFO sightings in general, though, one of the most well-documented sightings was the Mexican Air Force sighting of 2004. On March 5th of that year, several Mexican Air Force pilots filmed a series of strange, glowing, unidentified flying objects, 11 in total, hovering in the skies over southern Campeche State. The pilots were on a routine anti-drug trafficking mission when they spotted the strange objects which they reported surrounding their jet. They attempted to pursue the objects, but eventually they disappeared out of sight. Gotta say, this is a pretty compelling piece of footage. There is video of it out there online. Even though the video quality isn't great, you get to observe these objects for a long time. It's not like they just appeared and then flew away out of nowhere. Plus, I find it interesting when pilots who spend a lot of time flying around up there have something to say about stuff like this. And they're like, I don't know what that was. It's pretty interesting. And at number 3, we have Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Now, this place isn't just famous for all the alien sightings, but a bunch of other highly bizarre, suspicious things that go on there as well. Weird mutated creatures, mysterious disappearances, even ghosts. Anything goes there. It's just a grab bag of mixed genres. The stretch of land is renowned for being one of the strangest places, not just in the United States, but in the entire world. This remote area has been the site of reported sightings of strange creatures, unexplained lights, and other inexplicable events that have left locals and paranormal enthusiasts from all around the world pretty interested. One of the creepiest things at Skinwalker Ranch is skinwalkers. According to Native American legends, skinwalkers have the ability to transform into various animals and are associated with dark magic and witchcraft. Witnesses claim to have encountered these strange animals with glowing red eyes, and bullets don't seem to affect them. But we're not here to talk about skinwalkers today. Back to the little gray weirdos I hear you all chanting through your screens. Yes, the ranch is also plagued by frequent UFO sightings. Witnesses have reported seeing unidentified flying objects maneuvering through the sky at incredible speeds, performing maneuvers that seem to defy the laws of physics. These sightings have led to the belief that the ranch is a hotspot for extraterrestrial activity, attracting beings from other worlds who, maybe they just have an interest in all the paranormal activity in the area. Skinwalker Ranch also experiences stuff like bizarre electromagnetic fluctuations, unexplained animal mutilations, and sudden changes in weather patterns. Even scientific investigations conducted on the ranch have corroborated some of this strange phenomena. Number 2, Area 51. Area 51 is a highly classified United States Air Force facility located in the Nevada desert. It's been at the center of countless conspiracy theories for decades, primarily ones featuring aliens and UFOs. One of the most well-known conspiracies is that Area 51 holds evidence of extraterrestrial life and serves as a hub for alien technology research. Believers argue that crashed UFOs and their occupants are secretly stored and studied within the base. Believers argue that crashed UFOs and the occupants are secretly stored and studied within the base. Some even believe that aliens actually work in the facility. There are stories of reverse engineering and advanced alien spacecraft leading to the development of advanced military technology that surpasses anything publicly known. Bob Lazar is a major figure in this particular area. Another intriguing mystery surrounding Area 51 is its alleged connection to top secret government experiments and projects. Some theories state that the facility is involved in testing and developing advanced aircraft, performing alien autopsies, developing stealth technology, and even time travel technology. There are enough interesting stories surrounding Area 51 to sink a ship, and some eerie stories surrounding it too. Take, for example, the disappearance of Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach was a hiker and explorer who disappeared in 2014. He'd been looking for a strange cave in the Nevada desert. He'd posted a YouTube comment stating that he had come across a strange cave shaped like an M near Nellis Air Force Base and Area 51 that had caused his body to vibrate. He was encouraged to search for the cave again by other commenters and capture it on film. which he did, posting a video to his YouTube channel, Snakebite McGee, entitled M Cave Hike. A couple months later, he ventured out for a third time to the cave and sadly was never seen again. His cell phone was found at the entrance of an old mine shaft, but his body has never been found. Now, he very well could have just got lost, had an accident, but given how close the cave is to Area 51 and the claims Kenny made about the strange vibrations and feeling weird around the cave, there are tons of rumors and theories that began spreading online that he may have stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to, maybe extraterrestrial or the government secret related, and that his trek was intentionally disrupted. Till this day, nobody knows exactly what happened. Finally, though, we have Dulce Base in New Mexico. This is said to be an epicenter for all things extraterrestrial. Dulce Base sits deep beneath the Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico. Now on the surface, just your average everyday town, but below ground, that's where things apparently get really interesting. Dulce Base is like the Area 51 of the underground world, a secret facility where humans and aliens are rumored to be cozying up and exchanging ideas. Some folks claim there are multiple levels below the surface, each one more hush-hush than the last. We're talking high-tech labs, mind-bending experiments, and of course, aliens. The rumors are that different alien species, from the Greys to the reptilians, are working hand in hand with the US government. As to what they're trying to accomplish, that's the big question. Some speculate it's all about advanced technology, others think it's genetic experiments, and a few even believe there's full-blown alien-human hybrid breeding programs going on. Now, where do these stories come from? Well, it's a mishmash of conspiracy theories, supposed insider testimonies, and good old-fashioned internet speculation. Whistleblowers, folks who claim to have worked in the shadows, have spilled the beans on what's allegedly happening in Dulce Base, talking about mind control experiments, human abductions, and covert operations. And of course, no wild tale is complete without a dash of controversy. Skeptics, as you'd expect, call this all a bunch of hooey, waving away the stories, labeling them as nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations and late-night sci-fi binges. But just like with everything on this list, only those who have seen these places know for sure what's actually going on.